quorum, so we are going to start this meeting on time because we got a lot to cover here. I want to welcome everybody to the meeting of the Maine Recovery Council, and I'll start with introductions for those members of the public that are joining us. My name is Pat Kimball. I'm a recovering ally, and I'm chair of the Recovery Council. And I'm going to start over there with you, Bruce.
Hi, I'm Bruce Norton, Maine Entry Network, person belongs to recovery and person who lives with mental health challenges. I'm Paul Wenzel, an addiction medicine physician working with Sterling, from State University.
Betsy Fitzgerald, representing the counties and municipalities.
Mary Coyne, coordinator.
Haley Tranco with the Attorney General's office.
Katrina Bonish with the Attorney General's office.
Joe Everett, the president and CEO of the Opportunity Alliance in South Portland.
Summer intern for Smith.
Benjamin Mann, Deputy Commissioner of Finance.
Thank you. And those on Zoom, we'll start with Kina.
Hi there, Kina Thacker, infectious disease addiction medicine back in Portland.
Thank you. And Eric?
Yes, good afternoon. My name is Eric Small. I work here at the Sanford Police Department. I represent the litigating subdivisions.
And not last but not least, Brendan.
Hi, Brendan O'Neill with the Attorney General's office.
All right, thank you. So I have a few quick announcements, and then I will tell you how the agenda will go, and then we'll start. So first of all, I want to thank everyone who took up time of their day to attend the Governor's Summit. And I appreciate your flexibility when we couldn't get everyone on the stage and being able to sort of sit on the stage and take questions. So thank you very much for that. I want to say thank you to the prevention group. Liz is not here today, but you got some of the material that prevention group has been doing. They've been doing amazing work. And when that's complete, Liz will be doing a total presentation to the full council, but I wanted to take the time to thank her. I wanted to share with you all that, the Attorney General announced that he has set aside some funds to do data collection through Muskie, right? Is it Muskie?
The color.
The Cutler Institute, yeah.
Institute, through the Cutler Institute, and they will be also doing some work for the council. And Mary and I are trying to set up a meeting to speak with them, and then hopefully once we get a summary of that, they will come to the full council and present to us what some of the things they can do for us, particularly in regards to one of the things that we are charged with is a dashboard. So they'll be able to work with us with that and see where we are.
I think Brendan has something to add to that.
Oh, yes, Brendan?
Thanks, Pat. Just a couple other points on the that piece about Cutler. A big part of what Cutler will be doing is not just data collection, but also making available to the subdivisions around the state that received opioid settlement money technical expertise about a whole range of things, essentially focused on helping subdivisions find resources to help them put the money to the best use possible in their community with their own data. And so, some things, could include anything from, for example, helping them start a local planning process with, local advocates and families and, interested parties in the community to, putting together a spending plan to, if they have a spending plan, identifying evidence-based programs and services that meet the approved uses. So it's there's going to be available to the subdivisions quite a lot of help about how they can use their own settlement funds in the best way possible to meet their own needs.
It's a really good thing. So thank you for pointing that out. And I just want to share with you that the executive committee will be meeting sometime in September. Most of that meeting will be an executive session to discuss personnel, but Mary's contract is complete in November. So we want to talk about renewing the contract. We want to talk about what that looks like. The executive committee will do that, and then we'll bring that recommendation to the the full council so that we make sure that she gets a contract. Part of the reason I want to try to do that before November, because technically our terms all run out in November. And so I'd like to get that complete before that is done. So
Our terms are now in November. How do we go about requesting to continue or not?
So I have Brendan researching that for us, and then we'll get back to you as to how we do that. We'll make sure that you all know how either to, again, I know that Eric has already shared with us that he will not renew his term, which is sad, but we all, again, it's a time commitment, and we all don't always have it. Grateful for his service for the 2 terms, but the 1 term, the 2 years. But Brendan is researching for us, so we'll all get to know what that next step is. So, all right.
I have a quick question, Pat.
Yeah.
Brendan, while you're doing this research, or if you already know, can you let me know when our term actually ends? Is there like a specific date?
Yeah, I can get back to you, or I can answer it, during this meeting.
I can have an answer in 2 minutes.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was
I'm
expecting.
gonna have this answer in 2 minutes. You name that
November
tune in.
22nd.
I think it's November 22nd. Yeah, but you guys are all on the Secretary of State's website and I can look it up.
Okay, so,
Okay, and then Brendan, also one more question on this is: have you determined a final recommendation about the language of the legislation on whether or not the term limits are a lifetime term limit or a great term limit like the legislature?
she wants to know if it's a lifetime, so if
No, it's another year and then you could do 2 more months. No.
she's saying, does that look like a year passes, can you go on for another 2 terms? Yeah. Okay, so,
I think she was asking Brendan.
Yeah.
I was asking Brendan.
Yeah. I haven't looked at that in a little while. My recollection is it was my office's understanding that it was a 2-term limit.
Lifetime.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
the lifetime commitment.
Your terms expire on the 21st of November.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right, so those are just my announcements. I'm going to share with you the flow of the meeting because it's a little bit different from it was. What's going to happen is that we'll review the minutes. We'll have a brief update from Brendan about contracts and some other things we need to talk about. We'll have a treasurer's report, and then the bulk of the meeting will be grants and program and coordinators report sort of combined. If we're looking at the time right, we need about an hour and a half to really do what we need to do, the bulk of the work. So we're going to try to squish within a half an hour the other parts of this meeting and then move forward. Because even if we extend this meeting, it's a hard 4:45. We have to be out of here. This building closes down at 5, and we need to be respectful for people to pack up their computers and get out of there. So it's a hard 4:45. We have to be out of this building. So we're going to try to be taskmasters and keep you on task, on time, and move forward. All right. They don't let me have a gavel, so I can't do that. All right. So the first order of business is to review the minutes. The question is, before the July meeting, you got copies of the June minutes. And then you got copies of the July minutes. Are you comfortable with voting on both of those today in a combined? So I will take a motion that accepts the June and July minutes. Moved. Bruce. And Representative. Is there any discussion on those minutes? If not, can you take a roll, please?
Liz Blackwell-Moore, Todd Brackett, Lydia Crafts,
Yes.
Joe Everett,
Yes.
Betsy Fitzgerald,
Yes.
Courtney Gary Allen.
Abstain.
I think I need your camera on, but I don't know that I need it for an abstention.
Well, that's why I'm abstaining.
Oh, okay.
I can't turn my camera on.
Pat Kimball,
Yes.
Ben Mann,
Yes.
Bruce Nodden,
Yes.
Miles Olet, nope. Eric Small,
I'm gonna abstain as I was not at one of those meetings.
Gordon Smith,
Yeah.
Tina Thackrar,
I abstain. I wasn't at the meeting.
Chastity Toole, Paul Vinsel.
I'm gonna abstain, 'cause I wasn't. Do we have enough quorum for?
We wouldn't have even with your vote because we need to work on 3/4 of the, or 2/3 of the council. So I would have needed 9 votes and I have 7.
The motion fails.
Motion fails.
All right, we'll try again next month. Thank you. All right, we are going to go to Brendan's report.
Thanks, Pat. I'm not there today, with apologies to everyone, because I have family obligations due to COVID. And that's a little awkward for me, to be candid, because this is both Haley's last meeting as well as the first meeting for Katrina Bonish. Katrina, as you know, has been in committee meetings, but this is her first full council meeting. And so I just want to personally acknowledge Haley for everything that she's done to help me with all of the work we've been doing for the council, and to make sure everybody in the room understands that we're transitioning from Haley to Katrina, and there will be a new Haley that comes in down the road, but in the interim we'll have Katrina bridging us. But I did want to just take a minute to make sure everybody understood that this is Haley's last meeting, and to express my gratitude for everything that she's done, which has been far more than I could have expected. So
Thank you.
and let me give an opportunity in case anyone else wants to say anything. I don't want to rush past this moment. I could also, I'm really not trying to
Making a
embarrass you, Haley.
speech.
She has to get used to that.
It's true.
Haley, I just want to stay on the record. I'm wicked excited to get to become baby lawyers together, and I'm looking forward to our time in law school.
Me too.
Congratulations, and thank you for helping to protect opiate settlement monies in Maine for many decades to come.
Oh, my pleasure.
All right. I love detail, and Haley's detailed.
Seeing no other comments, I'll move on unless somebody else wants to jump in. The next topic is this morning and at various times, I've been talking with Mary and with Haley and Katrina about the letters of intent process. And as I understand it, there's a plan or proposal. I think it's a plan to, and I think this would be my recommendation to the council. And Mary, you can jump in if you want to make a different recommendation. But I would, there's a plan that I would suggest regarding the LOIs that we can flesh out later when Mary takes over that part of the conversation, to make the LOIs available publicly on the council's website on the day after the applications or the application's deadline is over. So hypothetically, if the application deadline is September 1st, then on September 2nd, we would use the time between now and then to prepare to make the LOIs publicly available on the council's website. And that would be, I think, all of the LOIs that the council received. So, I just wanted to report on that step in the future. And happy to hear from the council either now or during Mary's section. But that would be a recommendation that I would make.
Paul?
Brendan, would you recommend that we put the scoring public also, or just the LOIs themselves?
I'm just proposing the LOIs themselves.
Do you want to have a roll call and a vote on that recommendation? That be our process? If so, I'll take a motion.
I move that we make the LOIs public on our website the day after the deadline for application.
Thank you. It's been seconded. Further discussion on that? Okay, can you call a roll, Haley?
Yes. Liz Blackwell-Moore, Todd Brackett, Lydia Crafts, Joe Everett,
Yeah.
Betsy Fitzgerald,
Yes.
Courtney Gary Allen,
Yes.
thanks, Pat Kimball,
Yes.
Ben Mann,
Yes.
Bruce Nodden,
Yes.
Miles Olet, Eric Small,
Yes.
Gordon Smith,
Yes.
Keena Thackrar,
Yes.
Chastity Toole, Paul Vinsel. That carries with 11.
All right, thank you very much. All right.
And then briefly on contracts, there's a series of things. First of all, on July 31st, the council's first funding got out the door to Recovery Wellness Initiative in Piscataquis County. My understanding is the money hit their bank account a couple days later. And that was the first payment of $217,000 and change that was a combination of roughly 175,000 or so. I'm sure I get that number wrong. That they're going to use to purchase a building that they'll use the rest of the money for to establish and run a recovery center, peer recovery center in Piscataquis County. And it was a pleasure to work with Barbara and Georgia. And I appreciate their patience as well as the patience of the seller of the building, Dr. Starbird, as we work through our contracts. So that I think will show up as a debit on the recovery fund for July 31st. And I've already moved on to the contracts for the syringe service providers. There was a brief discussion about them where I sought feedback from the finance committee. We've also started work on a draft of the contract for the prevention piece of the December allocations, starting with the Mayan draft contract. Katrina has been very helpful, and Haley has been very helpful in pulling together those materials. And Katrina has been working with me to try to mark up the existing the contract we just did with Recovery Wellness Initiative as sort of a form to speed the contracts along in those other areas. And the other contract I'm keenly aware of, and I want to express their patience for, is the Barry Dunn contract. Barry Dunn's been very, very helpful to the council, and we've been paying attention to getting that contract in place. So we're aware of it, and we're working to have that done.
Thank you. Questions, Gordon?
Not a question. I can add to that report by giving a brief report on Tessa's house. Because they are in queue, but they understand that they're following the SSPs and the prevention contract. And because it was sort of, as you know, we had repurposed some of the money in Franklin to that piece. And put that over into the town of Washington because they could open by September. Well, it'll likely be September before we get them the money, the contract, did that. And so they went out and were able to work with the bank, and they borrowed about half of that amount. And so they're buying furniture, they're hiring staff, because that made a lot of sense. I mean, national medically supervised referral, those will likely receive the last beds that we and the state ought to support until we get more data every day on how we're doing with the 7 facilities, I think it's 7 we can't take here. Make sure that we get the word out that these beds are now available and get patients in those beds, because it's possible that, particularly with Tesla's house coming on, as well as the other facility that may open up the beds and may get into that. It's very possible that the capacity now is at least meets the demand and not exceeds it, at least in the summer when the demand is okay. So if that's what you need, is I want to report on Tesla's house because it's going to be exciting when it opens at this Sangerville, and that really is looking really good. I happen to know they have a closing schedule on property tomorrow, and that Courtney's organization has an event in that building next Wednesday night, and several of us are going to be there, and it's going to be a joyous day. Thank you.
Thank you for that update.
I'm having a little trouble understanding you, Gordon. I know you're soft spoken, you got the mask on, but for what it's worth, as much volume as you can give
I'll try not to talk.
it.
Any questions for either Gordon on Tessa's house or Brennan?
Not a question, just want to add that they have extended the invite to the full council to join that listening session. And given me the address if you would like. They were very excited when I spoke to them yesterday about the closing date. So
They're so
I
excited.
said that I would share that when it's closing.
Courtney?
Of course, it is extended for the whole council. I will be there, I'll just be a little late because I have to drive to Boston and then to Scottsdale County in the same day. So it's gonna be 3 times. It's Wednesday, the 14th at 5 o'clock. 6 o'clock, I think. My question, as part of our listening sessions, I've been to almost every county in the state. And my question is about the syringe service program contract. And we can probably take this to a grant committee meeting to discuss. I was just wondering if there is a way to confirm that the certified syringe exchanges that are getting money are also currently in operation, and are providing services for the certified syringe program that they're getting money for.
I think that is a question for the grants committee. I don't think anyone can answer that. Mary can? All
I can
right.
speak to it a little bit. I spoke with Carolina. We've been working together the past couple months, and she did give me a list, and we spoke about a couple organizations that reached out thinking they may be qualified for this funding. And based on last year's reports in 2023, they did not show they were operating at the site they indicated. And so that was why they were not part of our current funding and that December allocation. So I believe they're all certified and operational based on last year. If that's changed in the past couple months, it would be different. So
Okay, we can take it to grant committee,
Okay.
but I would like to see a final list of people who received that money and be able to ensure that they're currently operating.
I sent allocation letters and I can send that to you
Thank you.
and the full council. Yes.
Right, thank you. Any other questions about contract? Thanks for the update, Brendan, and we will move on to finance. I'm going to move on to Ben.
We met at the end of July, as maybe I'll keep this short because we have a lot of time. I don't have a update for July expenses from the office of the general yet. We've done the next few days. But we ended June with 30.8 million, started June with 30.6. It's the same one thing I gave last month. So there's pretty minimal activity in the accounts. In June, we know that we received a few settlement funds in July, so that most likely this was as well, so that we had a lengthy conversation around contracts, both syringe service providers and prevention contracts. I think we're substantive materials here. We'll just continue the discussion to walk through some of those items. The Finance Committee, we had some discussions around LOI as well, including funding per pillar, just so that we could narrow the number of applications, and also the discussions around vendor support. I have my personal notes up, I don't have the minutes up, so anyone else in the Finance Committee have anything else to add to that report out?
I don't think so. All right, and thank you very much. So, oh, Brendan, sorry, didn't see that well hand.
Thanks, Pat. Ben, I apologize. I couldn't hear very clearly. I think I heard you say that you didn't, and I think this is right. You haven't received the reconciliation for July.
Gotcha.
So I just want to flag for the council that we're about to post our new actual spreadsheet. It's already been delivered for posting, which will show on July 31st a payment to the recovery fund of just over $2.9 million. And Haley can put that spreadsheet up on the screen if it would be helpful, and even if it might not be helpful.
I will share my screen.
Wonder Woman's over there. She over here.
And that's all I have on that.
Right.
But I'm happy to answer questions if there are any.
I'm not. Oh.
It's not the easiest spreadsheet to read from this distance.
No, it's
See if I zoom in on this Maine Recovery Council column. The payment that just came in is this distributor one in row 25, 731. $2,926,556.21.
Any questions on the spreadsheet? All right. If I see no questions, thank you, Haley. And I am going to turn the remainder of this meeting, or at least until she can get through what she needs to Mary and the Grants Committee as a combined group, the coordinator plus the Grants Committee, to discuss the results and where we are with the LOI and moving forward. I'm going to ask you that Mary's got some specific instructions for us as we move forward, and I'm asking that we respect that to move forward so that we have all the information we need to make some important decisions. So thank you. Thanks, Joe and Mary.
Of course. Should I start? Okay. I'll cover a couple coordinator report things first. I want to share with the council that we received 2 presentation requests. One from Panacea Holistic Health to present on holistic health approaches to addiction, as well as from the Boys and Girls Club. They are looking to present on the prevention work they're doing with youth and mental health. So those will be added to our running list. If there are any others, please let me know. Panacea Holistic Health. So those will be added, and I let both organizations know that after the grant process, we'll start looking at those lists, and I'll be in touch when we are ready for them. Also, at the end of the meeting, I'll come back to this. There is a NASHB conference in September that many of the opioid settlement administrators are going to, that I'd like to request the council's approval to attend. So bookmark that for now. And with that, I will start with the presentation, please. Thank you all for your work with the LOI evaluations. I know that was no small feat and a time-consuming process for many, especially those who had 60 plus to score. So thank you. We received evaluations from everybody, and we have all of the evaluations we needed complete. There are a couple sort of adjustments that were made with the data just so we could compare them more easily, and I'll bring that up later in the discussion. for today, I wanted to go over a couple of things that we'll be discussing and what my hopes are for the outcomes from this meeting. The biggest component for me, and I discussed this with program and grants, is having a set of criteria and an outline for the grant application more or less established by the end of this meeting so that I can go back and work with Barry Dunn and we can have that draft ready for final approval in September. And again, I know this timeline's moving quickly, but we're sticking to, again, the hope of having this grant cycle completed by the time this council's term ends. I also mentioned to program and grants that in September, we'll need to start discussing an evaluator sort of procurement process, for lack of a better word, bringing in external evaluators for the grant application and what that will look like. We have already had one person who has volunteered, Penny Mills, who was the CEO of the
She was the
Medicine
former
Society.
CEO of ASAM. She's now retiring in Maine. And talked to Dr. Johnson and requested she would love to help in some way. So said we could find her some.
So that process we'll be talking about later on. And I know Gordon had mentioned that he had a few people who would potentially be interested as well. So in addition to discussing the grant application, as you all know, we'll be discussing a final slate of applications to move forward. As you see in the PowerPoint before you, it's an overview of all of the LOI submissions we've received and their average evaluation scores as well as recommendation scores. I do want to remind folks and sort of orient them again to the process and the purpose of the letter of intent. And that was really for us to gather more information about who was interested in applying for this funding, how much money they were looking for, what types of projects they were requesting. And as you all probably understand, after going through the evaluation process, a lot of questions came up about what was included in the total funding request and specific things about the organization, questions that we just didn't ask in the LOI. And those are questions that I urge you to consider including in the grant application. And that when we go through this process, being deliberate about questions that are better suited for a grant discussion and those that apply more to the scoring outcomes. Next slide. We will circle back to this later, but as we go through the LOI statistics and the scoring evaluations, I want to propose a recommendation for how the grant application is structured. This recommendation comes from discussions with Barry Dunn, my own recommendation from reviewing all of these submissions, knowing the projects and everything that's happening pretty intimately with them at this point. And also from all of the discussions that we've had around trying to make this process equitable, accessible, and fair. And part of that means making sure that small organizations who don't have the same capacity as larger organizations can apply for funding in a way that matches their project and funding structure best. So my recommendation is that we, after the LOI evaluation discussion, consider a 3-tiered grant application. And this would allow, as I mentioned, the grant application criteria to be based on the project type, the size of the organization, all of those factors that we've discussed at length in many of the program and grant committee meetings. It also would allow applicants to choose the track that fits their needs best, and allows for us to have all pillars apply under these tracks. So we get a range of projects and organizations that are applying. I also recommend that for each track, we do set a maximum award amount, and we try to give folks an approximate number of applications that we will be funding. And part of the LOI evaluation process was for us to see how submissions ranked, but also we now have information to provide to applicants about how they scored. And while we will not be sharing, as we previously discussed, this full submissions, we can give them a sense of how they scored in relation to other applicants. So an example of what my recommendation looks like, if we had 3 different tiers, we could do small, medium, and larger projects, and we could define each criteria as you all wish. Again, looking at how many awards would be suitable up to a certain funding amount, and that's information that we can get to later, again, as we look at a lot of the statistics from the submissions, and then again, the evaluation ranking. One thing this structure allows us to do is, again, by providing that max of funding, we give smaller organizations, new organizations, the ability to apply and apply up to a certain amount to inspire hopefully some innovation and give those folks a voice to say, here's what we could do with that money. And it also allows other organizations who cannot continue their work within the funding structure we provide to tell us that and then make a decision accordingly if it's suitable for them to apply and if they want to go through that process. Also, these numbers are ones that these will change. Again, I just wanted to give you all an idea, and that will be your decision to make as we move through this. All right, now to talk about LOI submissions generally. We were going to present this in July. This is updated with the most recent information. As you can see, we received, recovery support was the most submissions we received. We received nearly $88 million worth of funding requests. And most of the projects were over 1 or 2 years or a lump sum, and only a few of them were for startup funding and didn't request year 2.
That was the lump, so they either requested 1 year, 2 year, or lump sum. The other is the lump sum, so there weren't any others besides 1 year, 2 year lump sum.
This represents the average funding request by pillar. As you can see, treatment, over 500,000 was the average request for those submissions, and recovery support had the lowest average funding request.
The chart is for the total funding request. It's not for the average, just so you know.
Oh, those are?
The money by pillar relates to the second chart, the total funding request by pillar. There's not one for the average funding request.
Thank you.
Do we move on?
Any questions on these slides? Oh, and I should mention, as we go through these, if you have questions, please let me know. I don't have too much additional information to offer besides what you see, but I'm happy to answer questions, and I might have those answers. Great. By priority strategy, we saw the most submissions for harm reduction in community-based overdose education and naloxone distribution, wellness kits, and drug tracking initiatives. And then we saw the fewest in the second, which was expanding access to the comprehensive syringe service programs, peer support services, referral to treatment. I will say, in many of these applications, what's included in number 2 were components of the application. So I don't think that's reflective of the total LOIs, but just the specific strategy that was selected. And then we also have some mobile units, recovery support, expanding access to recovery community centers, the recovery coaches. I'm having a hard time reading it.
It's right here.
Oh, nice, okay. And then increasing access to affordable housing for people, especially when it comes to underserved populations. We did see quite a few. Yes.
Are you able to tell us, like, the breakdown of recovery, the number 1 strategy? Are you able to tell us how many organizations applied? Would that be different, or 43 different organizations that applied under that, or are some organizations applying multiple different projects under the same?
It's by project. So if one organization put in 3 for that, then all 3 are counted. It's not by organization.
Mm-hmm. Next slide. And then for treatment, our priority strategy number 2, providing flexible funding to organizations to assist individuals through activities such as transportation and other necessities. That was what we received the most for. And then we also received almost equally as many other submissions
I
in
put the wrong
treatment.
pie chart here. I don't know how, but this pie chart definitely doesn't apply to these numbers.
It's okay. We can update it before we publish it.
I'm like, the colors aren't even.
I've looked at so many pie charts.
Yeah, no, same.
Here's an overview of funding requests by entity. Something to consider as we think about eligibility, or again, considerations for the grant application.
If there was an entity that was only mentioned once, I included them under all other answers, and then I put a little blurb at the bottom, like we only got one from a 501c4, one from a 501c6, one school district, so it didn't look right on the pie chart to have them all tiny little slices, so they're down there.
And this slide shows you the geographic distribution. What's wonderful is that we received requests for funding for projects or activities that will serve all 16 counties. It was not an equal distribution, but this also does reflect if a county or if a project selected multiple counties and or statewide, we included each of those within this metric. So you'll see far more, this count is far higher than the actual number of submissions we've received. Go back, please.
Mary, do you know if this also reflects a similar percentage of population in the state?
It does not. It's just the raw count of the people who added each county.
We need to put, superimpose that on the actual percentage of population in the state.
Yeah, you could do that.
It kind of makes sense, like Cumberland was
Highest.
more,
Yeah.
that's the most populous.
Yeah.
Washington County, sort of like least populated. and
Piscataquis.
we're right down there,
Yeah, York has less than Kennebec and Penobscot.
Yeah. But it also doesn't represent the gaps.
No, right.
Yeah.
That it'll say what the population is, but it doesn't, again, it sort of doesn't address that the more rural, the smaller ones have less services available to them and less funding available to them.
And does it tie back to our original goal, which I believe was reduce overdose deaths by X amount of percent? I can't remember what the percentage was. But is it representative of the rate of overdose per population? Does that make sense?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
That's data that Dr. Johnson included in her reports. So I can certainly, overlay them.
Yeah.
And then when we discuss the grant criteria in our evaluation process, if obviously the underserved areas are ones we want to prioritize, then we can include that in our scoring rubric.
Yeah, you have to define underserved. So
Yeah.
Are we talking about underserved resources, or are we talking about overdose? They could be the same, I don't know.
All right, now to get into how things scored, which I'm sure you're all eager to know. I'm going to start highest to lowest, and as you all have in front of you, so this builds off of the LOI review guide that I included. And for those on Zoom, the initial numbers, there were some errors, so we have an updated copy, which those in the room have.
Oh, right, we didn't send the updated copy to everyone.
No.
But that's okay. It's with things.
So we had 4 applications that received perfect scores. And as you can see, 2 of those applications also received perfect average scores. One was a harm reduction, one was a recovery support. And then we also have two others in harm reduction that received perfect evaluation scores.
That's average across three evaluations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The average funding request for these four was nearly 300,000, and the total request amount amongst all four was almost 1.2 million.
This isn't 300, but we can go back and look at that. Yeah.
So again, something to consider as we move through this process. These are four high scoring applications that have 1.5 million that's being requested. Amongst these four, I did it, but Haley's telling me I was maybe wrong. It's on the sheet of,
well, I know the
1.2 million was the total request amongst these four.
That sounds right. Make sure to say LOIs, not applications.
That's really exciting to see that 3 of the 4 hospitals are.
Yeah.
So in our next sort of category of rankings, here are the first few. We had many, so they're broken up into a couple of slides. For these submissions, the average evaluation score was less than 17 and equal to or greater than 15. We had 78 submissions that fell within this ranking. Harm reduction, there was 22, recovery support, 36, and then treatment, there was 20. The average recommendation score was fairly high for this category in this range at 3.34. The total funding request amount for these applications, or these submissions, if you want to go to the next slide, because the average funding request was $433,000, and the total funding request in this category was $33 million. And at this point, my proposal to you all, or my recommendation would be to invite all of these applications to move forward, these submissions to move forward and submit full proposals to the council.
And what was the total amount that was represented by these applications?
Almost 34 million by these. Yeah. So if you had an average evaluation score that was 15, or it was less than 17, but equal to or greater than 15, so within that 2-point range, this was the second category.
That's these 3 things.
Yes. Yep.
Do you?
Yeah, so there was right. So to try to categorize it and look again at the recommendation scores and all of that, I wanted to present you all with sort of groupings of these so we could look at them and not go through every single evaluation to score, but instead score, I should have started off by saying this, to score in groups, and that was a recommendation from the Program and Grants Committee. So this reflects those groups, and again, a recommendation that I have based on the scoring, a decision you all will make.
I think this is the confusion. The carrots go the wrong way.
Oh, the carrot.
Yeah, it's okay. Just in the middle.
Again, stats was not my thing. Sorry about that.
Mary, I have a little question. Did anyone do the complicated math to find the standard deviation?
Yeah, you have it. You should have it in it looks like this. I put it together.
Yeah.
I named you reviewers 1 through 13. You've got your average score and then your Z-scores. The highest one was only 2.08 deviations outside of the mean. So I think you all, and that was like an outlier almost. The next highest one is 1.23 outside of the mean.
Okay.
So
You did pretty good.
you did, yeah. A little left skewing, tougher graders, but yeah.
If you want to know who you are on that list, I have a list.
Yeah, we've got a key.
You want to know if you're a really high scorer or low scorer? They have the numbers.
Was there any statistical difference?
No, so I mean, you want all of your data. I mean, you want like 95% of your data to fall within 2 standard deviations from the mean. So we've got one that's 2.08. That's like fairly normal for like a set of 13 to have something beyond 2 standard deviations. So the data's pretty normal. It's a little left skewed, so you guys graded a little harder than you could have, but it's fairly normally distributed. It's nothing to be concerned about for sure.
That's probably our high expertise in the field.
I would guess so. Yeah.
Collectively, we have decades of work in this field.
So Mary, what you're asking of the council is that in these 3 pages, 1, 2 to 15, that those all move forward
That's
and be
my,
invited to apply for the grant.
yes, that's my proposal right now. If we can wait until we move through each category to have a discussion, that would be great. I think providing the context first is important, as was providing context on the grant application decisions we need to make, and how these scores will inform that.
All right, thank you.
I'm sorry, I'm dead. Can you please explain it one more time?
It's okay,
The
this,
decision that we're making?
so the purpose of today's meeting is for us to decide which submissions move forward and are invited to submit a full grant application. Based on the recommendation of program and grants, we're not going to go through all 220 of them. So what we did instead, and what I did, is I grouped them into categories based on their average evaluation score. So that's how we're looking at them now. And then after we go through all of them, we will have discussions at least about the last 2 categories that are in yellow and red. And we can also come back here if we'd like. But my proposal is that we invite, if you have an average evaluation score of 13 or higher, my recommendation is we invite them to submit full grant proposals.
Great, I like that. Everything Mary said.
Besides, listen to my math. Don't do that. Okay, thank you. Thanks. Again, we're broken up into a couple slides here because we couldn't fit everything. But these next 2 slides are for submissions that scored a 13, but scored below, at least a 13, but scored below a 15. So we're in sort of our next category of rankings down. We had 81 submissions. The total funding request across all of them was nearly 35 million. So a similar number of submissions and a similar total funding request amount as the last category of 15 to 17 average score. What is notable about these applications is they had lower average recommendation scores, lower than 3, up 2.74. Also comparable average funding request amount for these. Similar amount of recovery support, more treatment submissions, but only 7 harm reduction submissions scored within this category. Again, same category. Yeah, thank you. So these are, no, next one, please. That was 81. Great. So this gets into the next category that I do propose we discuss afterwards. These applications over the next couple slides received average evaluation scores of at least 10, but lower than 13. We had 45 submissions with a total funding request amount of 16 million across all 45. We only saw 1 harm reduction submission, 27 recovery support, and 17 treatment. So a similar distribution as the last 2 categories. 16 million, as I mentioned, was the average, or the total funding, and the average funding amount for these was 400,000. Again, very comparable to the last 2. At the end, there are about 20 of these submissions that I have selected and do propose we discuss. based on evaluation scores they received in the first of our 3 evaluation criteria, the eligibility requirements, approved use, and priority strategy questions.
So
Oh,
you,
go back.
I just want a clarification. So out of the 45 submitted in this category, the 10 to 13,
Mhm.
45 are submitted. You're recommending we discuss half of them or 20 of them for possible asking them to apply for grant.
Yes.
The other ones you're saying scored lower enough that you're not.
I am saying there are 20 that I believe we need to discuss about possibly not inviting to submit a full.
20 not
application.
invited.
Mhm.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I just need to make sure I included
Thank
the
you.
10. Okay, go. And now next one. And these were if a submission received an average evaluation score of less than 10. The average recommendation for these scores or these submissions was 1.47, but nearly $2 million was requested amongst these 12 submissions. There were 2 harm reduction, 8 recovery support, and 2 treatment. And the average funding request was about $151,000. These are submissions that a few of them were not deemed appropriate under these pillars. Some of them were considered by evaluators to be better fit for prevention, and the scores reflected that. Some of them did not include much information, or at least not a lot of relevant information to our submission process within the actual LOI. And that was consistent for all of these across all 3 evaluators. And that's reflected in both the average evaluation score and the average recommendation score. And as a reminder, you can, for the last 3 of our evaluation questions, you had to score at least a 1. And then you could have 5 additional points if you just checked all of our boxes. So this is also reflective of organizations that are doing what we're asking them to do technically, but not meeting any standards for us beyond that. So with that said, we can go back. I guess at this point, I'll stop. Are there any thoughts or comments or questions that the council would like to share? I also recognize this is an overwhelming amount of information, not a ton of context.
And Paul.
Could you just summarize what your recommendation is? I wasn't clear on how, if we accepted your recommendation, how many organizations, how many projects would be invited to an application?
If we did, it's a great question.
188, I believe. I believe 188, because Mary's proposing we exclude 32 out of our 220.
Based on this proposal, we would not be within the 2 to 3 times funding range that we had initially hoped for. We'll be inviting far more than $36 million worth of requests to move forward. But based on the LOI application and the questions we asked and our evaluation criteria, I would just encourage the council to recognize how subjective the process was for many people. And it was not as strong of a process for eliminating applications as it was for gathering information. And that is part of why there are relatively few submissions that I recommend we don't invite to move forward in the application process. Instead, allow applicants to decide if it is worth their time or if they would like to submit a full proposal based on the information we now have and the structure of our grant application.
So we had originally 2, and something here that talked about how many, ultimately how many, I'll make sure I understand. Ultimately, how many would be we would go from like 188, and you had a suggestion on each of the tiers, I remember, of how many we would be able to fund in each tier basis if we didn't find more money. So, and I didn't add those up, but I'm guessing it, or maybe, I don't know, 50 total, I don't know. But what I'm trying to ascertain is, let's say it is 50. That's 138 organizations spending time, getting their hopes up, preparing a final application. And, we like to have a proposal, but we don't have enough money. I think that's tremendous. I really do. That's why
I would say we invite the 15 and up to apply.
how would those numbers change based upon Mary's recommendation?
If you did 15 and up, you'd invite 82 people to apply.
Quite a difference.
And it would be about 35 million in funding requests.
And how would that break down in the three?
It would be 20 treatment, 37 recovery support, and 25 harm reduction.
And that one more time, please.
20 treatment, 37 recovery support, and 25 harm reduction have scores above 15, or are 15.
20 treatment, 37 recovery, 25 harm reduction.
Yes.
And what was the original amount of LOIs that we received?
Do you mind if I go back to that? Thanks. I am unsure. Oh, just kidding, Ben said on it.
73. Harm reduction of 35. 112.
Oh, you had a question while they're adding. Do you want to ask your question?
Yeah, I have two little questions. We'll leave it on a little. I've never applied for a grant or anything with that. When someone applies for a grant, in their mind, what do they think are the chances of them being accepted?
It depends on the grant you're applying. For instance, if I think in my day when I worked, when I was applying for federal grants, I think, oh, I got very little chance. Again, small, it really depends on whether it's a community-based grant or whether it's a federal or, an RFP from the state. I mean, it really, to be honest with you, anytime you apply for a grant, there's a good chance you're not going to get your money.
Okay.
It happens.
And that's why I like the way Mary laid it out, because typically like a federal grant, there will be this many awards given, there's this much total funding available, and then it kind of gives you that.
Yeah. So they can make up their mind. If you show that first slide that you had, Mary's thing was to put that in the letter to apply, saying you've been granted the permission to apply, but you need to know these are where we are. And some people may self-disclose them and say, oh, no, I'm not.
I don't even think we have 30 awards in the
Mary, can you explain why you think we should have a higher number of grant applications? Some of those pieces are on the lower end. Can you explain why you would like to see the grant application?
Yes, and thank you for that question because it does feel important to express and clarify. Our letter of intent evaluation was very simple. It captured our application, our submission itself, as well as our evaluation, did not ask questions, how do I word it? It did not get to, we did not provide the information within the submissions that many of you wanted to see when you went through the evaluation process, based on the comments that I reviewed. Because we don't have an appeals process, I'm hesitant for us to make decisions that are not based on concrete processes that we've established at this point, but instead to use the information we've gathered to, again, form a better, more appropriate grant application that can weed out, and for lack of better words, those applications that we may, those submissions that we may be on the fence about right now. I would be hesitant for the council to not invite an applicant to move forward based on the average evaluation score alone.
Representative Pat, and then Courtney.
A continuation of Paul's question. So are you saying that, for example, what we ranked as feasible and evidence-based, there were applications that I was making a judgment on how feasible or evidence-based with very little information? Like, did they use a term that I believe to be evidence-based? And so are you saying that there could be LOIs that with more information, I would have scored much higher in feasibility or evidence-based, but because we didn't ask that, we don't want to rule them out?
Yes, exactly that. And submissions where it was broken down in such a way that we weren't understanding fully what the total funding request amount was actually going towards. And there was a lot of variation in submissions around the level of detail they provided, especially when it comes to the budget and evidence-based activities. And if we didn't ask the question, I'm hesitant to make judgments.
Mary, I hear you. I really hear you. But I'm really struggling with the idea of inviting more than $60 million in requests when we currently have $12 million. There could be a discussion around, is there a little bit more, but there's not $60 million in funding available to us to give out. I'm speaking as a small grassroots organization, and I think on behalf of other small grassroots organizations that need to keep the lights on and pay the rent, that it is more ethical for us to say that to people now so that they can go figure out how to pay the rent. If this process is not going to work out for them. Yeah, I think that it's more ethical to just be honest about the reality that while this money is a great new source of funding for the crisis in Maine, it is not enough money, and it is not going to create a Shenstein's and Rainbows solution to the opioid crisis in Maine. It needs more money.
Thank you.
I hear that.
So I want to make about 4, maybe 5 very quick observations. We knew all along that at some point we have to make some very difficult decisions. There are way more positive projects that we have on the equipment, and that's the point of this. We're not the only thing. Progression, spending, grants, there's different buckets of money, and you can talk about that. Number 2, I could kind of live with the higher amount, partially because as long as we give them quite a bit of information, some of them will choose not to apply. We're inviting them, giving them an opportunity. So we would not get 188 applications, because they look, I get all that federal stuff, and I say, well, how many grants is it going to be? And total amount of money, what am I chances? And some organizations say, I just don't have the bandwidth to do that with that little opportunity I have. Thirdly, I tend to think that 188 is too many, but that 82 is not something to think about. And then I do at some point today, or at some point when I'm frank discussion about using more of our money to put on top of what we've put on, so that more could be funded. That's based upon money we might have had left over after last December, and money we have coming over the rest of the year. By the time we approve these, our bank account will have more money in it. I think what I do later today is ask the finance committee whether they would make a recommendation, whether they'd be comfortable, and whether they could see these funds are going to be available like in November, December. Well, why are we only putting out $9 million if in fact we just got in another 12? That's all I'm just
So I will share, Joe and then Ben. I will share with me. I'm with Mary to keep it open, but if nothing else, I could see us at least doing the first three, which would add another 81 able to apply. But Joe and then Ben.
So as a person, to Paul's original question, that's written a ton of grants. My organization's written a ton of grants. This LOI process for an organization is a gift. Typically, you submit an LOI, it just shows the funder that you're going to submit a full application. So to Gordon's point about people will opt out, I'm really, really supportive of Mary's work. Pat, when you just said, I'm totally supportive of the 181 going forward, because a lot of those folks, if we go with the tiered process, we'll have a better understanding of how we're going to move forward, and it could rule out at least 25%, which I believe it probably will. I think the more important thing is that I think when we invite the 181, we're going to get some really amazing applications. This didn't ferret that. This wasn't the purpose, to your point, Mary. So I just think we deserve, the people who need these services deserve more applicants, I think. So I think putting it forth, letting people apply, opt out, and I think the LOI was a gift for organizations. So I'm really supportive of the way Mary's laid it out.
Thank you, Joe. Ben.
Just to address Gordon and a couple other comments, I mean, we do have more funding available. It will create almost instantly very hard decisions in a year or 2 or 3 from now, because the funding that we will have provided, we'll have to stop providing. We're going to receive $20-something million in settlement funds distributions coming into the state this year. Next year, the Recovery Council is going to get 6. We're not going to get another 12. We're going to get 6. And we cannot support ongoing operations. And I in some ways, 1-time or 2-time award distributions is worse. It's going to create stress and volatility. And if you give me bad news, I can plan around bad news. If you give me uncertain news, I don't know how to plan around uncertain news. I'm not saying we shouldn't increase it maybe modestly, but it is every dollar we go. I think there's a little bit of room to probably increase it. We will happily take that up with the finance committee to discuss, but it's going to create much harder decisions very soon, like starting in next year.
The other thing that goes along with that is that if we increase the money, and I hate saying it, but I have to, that also increases the amount of contracts we have, and we haven't even gotten to the point of discussing staffing and how we are going to support that as a council, all of these organizations in managing that. I mean, we haven't even got to that point. So the more organizations you take on, the more workload gets here to the council, and we have 1 staff member full-time.
We also specifically said to applicants that we were awarding 12 million this round when they asked, and people may have used that to decide if they thought their project was of too large of scale to apply this round. So I feel like it just makes sense to stick to what we told people.
And just a couple other points. I think it seems like it's, I think there's, I'd be curious if there, and we don't have the data, I don't think right now, but if there was a large variation on a project by project basis as opposed to the average, like if every 15 score was 15, 15, 15, or if it was like, maybe 15 is a bad example, like that 13 score was like 2 17s and a 9, or 3 13s. That does have that's not quite the same, and it's like fairly inconsequential, but like we decided as a council, we're intending to provide each pillar the same amount of funding ultimately through the grant application. So we would be, Courtney and I were just doing the numbers here, if we went with the recommendation on what Mary put forward, we'd be saying yes to 71% of harm reduction applications and 27% of treatment applications and 33% of recovery support. But that's just creating more competition among the harm reduction community for the same amount of funding. We're just weeding out more recovery support and more treatment because believe our intention is still to provide ideally around 4 million per pillar. So we're just telling harm reduction providers to submit more grant applications to compete for the same amount of money. Right? So like it's literally just the competition that we're creating for the grant at this stage. Does that make sense?
Well, it would if we had voted on that, but I'm pretty sure we're wishy-washy, super wishy-washy on whether or not we're actually gonna do 4 million. I think people have said that.
I believe it was the consensus, it was never an official vote. I mean, you can look that up, but I believe it was the consensus that that would be the intent. And I think the discussion revolved around, we didn't want to peg ourselves into a hole if we saw something that slightly went over in a pillar that was a project we thought was amazing and wanted to do that. I think that was discussion and not taking an actual vote, but it was a consensus that we stick with equal amongst the pillars.
So the alternative still has the harm reduction community. Even if we just take those top 82, the harm reduction community is still going to have a very high percent of their applications applying. So there's still going to be that competition. There's only 7 out of this 81 middle layer that are harm reduction. And out of the top 2, 25 of the 35, I think, harm reduction are already being accepted. So they're going to have a competitive road ahead.
And just, this gets a little more complicated, but I do think there's other ways to weed out potential applicants. Like, I think, I don't know if this to be true, the majority, if not all recovery centers in the state apply for project-specific funding. I think it might make sense to do something like we did with syringe service providers and just do a across-the-board allocation to each of them, just to use that group of providers as an example, as opposed to saying this provider asked for 3 more employees and this one asked for $10,000. You know, I think that might be based on need. It might be based on ambition. It might be based on something we don't know, but it might make sense to try to standardize some things like that. Or for also, like, are we doing multiple awards to the same organization? I think we could eliminate some by just saying we're only going to award one per organization.
You also have, if they apply for a full grant, you also can say, I'm not giving you $1 million that you asked for. I'm giving you 50,000 of the million, and they can say, well, I don't want the 50, and you say, thank you very much. You have that ability to be able to look at the application, and once you have a full financial piece in front of you, you can ask those questions. For instance, the state is giving you money, or you can look at it and compare, saying, we know that this program works on this amount of money. Why have you asked so much money? And you have that ability to not accept their full request. That is in your realm to say that.
It is. We wouldn't know that until after we send out the award. So, and then we'll have leftover funding.
Well, you would make that determination at the time that you looked at the grant application, and so the reviewer would have, or could have a place. Are you recommending this grant at 100% of their funding request, or are you can say that as a reviewer? Because that's what, again, I hate to keep going back to United Way, but that's what they do. When you review it, it asks you the question, do you believe they should receive the full funding? Okay, I get, yeah, just a second. So that's a possibility that you can do. Tina, please.
Oh yeah, I just had a question, and I apologize if I missed this. It's a little bit hard to hear today, but in terms of the tiers or their tracks, I really like that idea. But I guess my question is about the large scale projects, which says up to 250 each. I guess I'm just curious where that number.
The numbers are examples. They're all subject to change.
Oh, okay. Okay. I just wanted to make sure because I'm looking at the list and it seems like.
Yeah, we barely have any under 25,000 too. So the numbers all change. Yeah.
And my recommendation in presenting this was that we could decide on these numbers now that we have the information on the LOI scores.
Got it. Thank you.
Courtney.
I'm wondering if maybe we could work backwards. Can we all agree that under 10 is not moving the agreement there.
Yep.
Can we all agree that 10 to 13 is not moving forward?
I don't understand what you're asking.
When the tiers here.
So you're saying you don't want to do under 10, you don't want to do anything under 10.
I'm attempting to do a straw poll to see if there's anywhere that you agree.
Before the 10 to 13, would you all mind if we went to that slide for discussion?
Yeah.
Because I think that's important to also recognize.
A few slides away.
There's so much data behind these, and I want to give you all a little bit of context into where I was coming from, and also recognize, Courtney, what you had mentioned about keeping it at like a 60 million.
It's actually 60
I wish we could have done, and I was very aware of my role as coordinator is not to make those decisions, but instead to provide you all with the information I have. So I just want to say that. This also, this shows from that 10 to 13 range, the submissions where a 0 was noted for eligibility, meaning at least one reviewer thought that organization was not eligible to apply. The submissions where a 0 was indicated for approved use by at least one reviewer. And if there's multiple categories, then that's what the little asterisk is. And then 20 submissions within this range where at least one reviewer said this doesn't align with a priority strategy, or the priority strategy selected does not align with the project.
So these are the ones that you would recommend we not invite.
Mm-hmm. And my hope too in this was to, again, give you an example of the content really behind these scores, and that this category, this is pretty representative of the category and the types of questions that evaluators had, which were primarily around, again, is this a suitable project?
So-
not the intricacies of the project.
So in an open consensus, can we agree to not invite under 10 or under 13? This list, 10 to 13.
This isn't 10 to 13. It's just 20 of the 10 to 13s that Mary's recommending we don't invite.
Okay, that these don't move forward. Gordon?
I'm a little confused. So I just want to make sure that I understand that we're dropping out of this particular category, the bottom 20.
Mm-hmm.
The bottom
Not necessarily the bottom 20, but these 20 that reach this criteria.
20 right here, you know.
That reach the criteria on the side, either blue, green, or gray applied to them.
So, can I make a,
Mm-hmm.
I would move that we, not invite the 12 that have average score less than 10, and the 20 that have score between 10 and 13, met these criteria that Mary pointed out. So I would move that we decide right now to not invite these 32 total LOIs.
Is that a motion?
Yes. A second.
That's accepted. Any discussion on that?
Yes. Did any, Mary, and not to be disrespectful of my colleagues, but were these when people thought they weren't eligible, were we able to double, like, if you and I didn't agree, Pat said yes and I said they weren't, but they in fact, like, did we arbitrate that to make sure that these columns were in fact, maybe I'm misreading this, that if I said they weren't eligible and Paul said they were, like who, where do we land on that?
And that's something that we can open the discussion up to. I can tell you which submission it was if you individually scored it. And I think it would be best practice for us to at least go through that for some of these, maybe not the ones that fit all three of these categories or have two reviewers. But if one person thought it was not a priority strategy, if you would like the opportunity to speak up and say that, I'll tell you. You are.
Ask Mary, what's the downside of just eliminating all of them, like from 13?
That'd be 47.
I don't know if I have a full answer for that.
side? We're not eliminating a whole lot. I mean, I'll just speak honestly, if we submitted, we submitted an LOI. We didn't score above 13, then I don't think we deserve to be there.
But if you lost a point because I thought you weren't eligible, you might have got to 13. And I can live with what you're saying, Bruce. Like,
right.
I can live with the bottom two going, but I just sort of in terms of process, I just think and I don't need to actually go through. I think at some point, I think we have to have a postmortem around it. So if we're going to be scores, we need to look at this and go, let's be clear. But I can live with that. I'm just trying to get to the point around sort of
more experience,
quality control, like just. Yes. But I don't need to. I'm kind of in agreement with what you are. I just think that's what conversation. Maybe.
Is there any hands up there?
I also think at this point in the discussion, it could be helpful for us to look at the average recommendation score. These categories are focused on the evaluation, but as you see, even in these 20, the average average recommendation score for the second one, B33, is still a 3. And from my perspective, that warrants discussion before a vote, at least for some of them.
Let's start there.
Okay.
Can you tell us who evaluated the ones with the average recommendation score of 3?
I can.
And that said, 3 was like, probably should be funded,
Yeah,
right?
3 or 4 were the 2 highest. Yes, give me.
Sorry.
Brendan would appreciate that.
I struck that for the record.
I already did.
Are there others that you would like to just discuss while I'm here? Yeah. I know, I just need to think.
It seems to be fair, perhaps we're looking at two things. Those two that are rated the average. And then I think we should put like 5 that were found ineligible, but did okay with the other two columns. I think just to be fair, because I know that a question came up Tuesday at the transcript that, and again, I don't know who the review was, and I'll try to say this carefully, but we had a discussion about it, and that was the issue of whether a single individual was eligible to file an application. And there was at least one person on the call that felt, no, they weren't. And I felt that they can do it. We did not rule them out. But potentially a very good planning client. So if that person was ruled out just because they were an individual and hadn't formed a corporation, and that wasn't part of our criteria, then we should talk about it. I mean, that's just one example. That's why I say I think it's really fair to be talking about somebody doing that might get back into the pack. Now, if we make a decision that we're not going to look at anything on the
Okay, for B33, would you all like me to tell you which evaluator answered one of the X's to provide context? Sure. Is that how we should do this?
Are we allowed to go into executive session on this?
Nope. I'm just gonna go over and just tell you which application it was, or the name of the project, not the organization name.
Yeah, because we can't go into.
I believe if Brendan's still on or you're here, I believe executive session is for personnel.
Yeah, it has very specific.
Legal, and that's.
I would have had to notice this, that we were going to go into executive session.
Okay.
It's like,
all right,
yeah.
let's just do it.
Okay, with me coming over to tell you?
Am I the one?
Yeah, you are.
I was positive if it was me.
Yeah, just be mindful of the project names. That's the only thing that we can't
Here
have.
we go. We're gonna play this one out. Oh, I know exactly what it is, and I can send it. So the reason why on
B33.
B33,
Which one was it?
B33, the second column right there, the request is under treatment, 198,000.
I said that was. I said that that project was in the wrong pillar. So they applied under one pillar and they did not meet the criteria of that pillar.
Mhm.
Had they applied and were entitled the pillar it belonged to, they would have qualified.
Yeah, I had this one too. I said, in my notes, I said, although they didn't mark this as an approved use, because the applicant didn't mark as an approved use, I believe it falls under a different pillar. We should check to confirm dental something is critical for recovery.
So the distinction was treatment and maybe you both thought that was recovery before.
Yes.
Treatment.
And in that case, that project that we're talking about, I would say is very qualified, right? Is should, in my opinion, be invited to apply, but here.
To be
But again,
to apply under the
grant, the LOI. But again, you scored it like you should have, because you can't change and say, oh, they should have checked this. You scored it the way it is. But again, that's the pleasure of the LOI, is that you're requesting more information and be able to share with them. That it,
No, they didn't say that they were eligible. When they, in their LOI.
Yeah.
They did not check one of the eligible uses.
so it's, so you have to score it on that.
You have to score it based on.
Correct.
What they checked, but I believe that they were eligible on, based on their project, they are eligible for opiate settlement money.
But they failed to complete the application right.
They didn't see themselves, they disqualified themselves in their LOI,
Mhm.
but they were wrong. I've read literally every eligible use a million times.
Yeah.
But we're talking about priority strategies here, the ones that we developed, right?
Correct.
So but that's not a disqualification automatically, they just missed out on 1 point. So the average score for this would have been 13.3 or something, instead of 12.3, and still would have had a recommendation of 3. So it's not, this is like, it's really kind of meaningless in the big picture, I think. Not meaningless, it doesn't change what we're trying to decide here that much.
Except it would have bumped it up to the next.
Yeah, it would.
It would have put them in the next level.
If we're excluding this entire group, which is, and the longer we have this conversation, I actually almost think about, we should spend more time thinking about how we're going to staff the grant applications and invite everyone to apply.
I was gonna suggest that maybe the motion be amended to anything under 10 is not invited to apply. And then you've got your 10 to 13, that if there's somebody there who wants to, that's great. And if they don't, that's great too. And we can go from there. So I guess my question, Paul, is would you amend your motion? If you wanted to, I just throw it out there.
Right, there's a motion on the table.
There is.
Yeah.
But you can amend the motion.
Yeah.
Yes.
But the motion hasn't been voted on.
No.
No.
I would say that this project is a worthy project.
I was just gonna ask if it would be helpful for me to provide, well, some information about the under 10, about those applications.
I think we're good with those.
Yeah.
No.
And just these people, all are worthy of money.
Everybody applies.
It is the hardest thing you're ever going to do, is to say no. But at some point in time, you have to say no.
This is the easy part too. The hard part is when we're actually scoring and sort of funding.
Oh yeah, and when you see the details of and you're just drooling about what a great project it is, but you don't have the funding for it. So that'll be the hard part.
I know we're all not technically policymakers, but we're sitting at this table making policy decisions, and those are hard decisions. It is not a fun process, but it is our duty.
So
I will amend my motion that we not invite those LOIs
LOIs that scored less than 10 to submit a grant application.
Okay, and who seconded, do you remember?
I seconded it. I moved, all has been said how we amended. I'm gonna amend it that, because you could just withdraw it. Okay. You withdraw, I'll withdraw.
Okay, so the motion has been moved and seconded to withdraw. Do we need a vote?
No,
Okay, he's withdrawn it, so we don't need a vote. And so I'm looking for a motion. Now I'll make it.
I'll make a motion that the LOIs that scored less than 10, we not invite them for a full grant application.
If you scored a 10 though, you are invited to submit.
Well, yeah, this is
10 or above.
This is 10, well, no, I'm not making that. I'm just that we not invite this group, and then we can discuss the other ones.
Okay, so this motion is that we not invite anyone under 10, or 10 and under.
Under 10.
Under 10.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded.
so this isn't.
Discuss it. Joe.
This is not just the bottom.
This is these.
Yeah,
These.
I was just asking, but that doesn't mean that you're inviting people who scored 10 or higher to
I'm
apply.
not inviting
No.
anyone.
Okay.
He's
Just eliminating.
eliminating.
I'm saying no. I have the power.
Yes, thank you, Reagan.
I just have no photo sheets for them to go home.
That motion.
Gordon did. Okay, and Joe, you had a question.
No, I got it.
Okay, Mary.
Just clean up the bottom.
12.
Yeah.
Okay, and to clarify, it's these applicants with this specific project that they are not invited to apply.
Correct.
Yes.
So if they applied for another project, the same organization, but scored higher, they would be asked just this project. Any other discussion before we call a roll? All right.
Liz Blackwell Moore, Todd Brackett, Lydia Crafts,
Yes.
Joe Everett,
Yes.
Betsy Fitzgerald, Courtney Gary Allen,
Yes.
Pat Kimball,
Yes.
Ben Mann,
Yes.
Bruce Nodden,
Yes.
Mauzolette,
Yes.
Eric Small.
Yes.
I can't see you.
He was on.
Oh, he was? Okay.
Yeah.
I'm trusting you. Gordon Smith,
Yes.
Keena Thakrar,
Yes.
Chastity Toole,
Yes.
Paul Vinsel. That carries with 13.
Motion carries. Thank you very much. All right. Here we are. Now we have 100 and how many?
220 total.
So we have 220.
So 208.
Mine is what we just did, 12.
Okay, yeah.
We just eliminated 12.
It's 208.
We have 208 people that we are going to ask to apply. Yes, no, discussion.
Let them go.
At this point.
We like discussed before.
I don't think we need them, well, yeah, go ahead, Gordon.
Before the motion, so we can actually formulate a good, effective motion.
Yes.
I mean, I walked in this room fully expecting that I would have no chance that I would support that many applications. But because of our discussion, this is why we have these discussions. The fact that the organization, as long as they know what their odds are, so to speak, like the average score that they have.
We can decide on that.
Okay, so the fact that they won't all apply, particularly, we haven't determined the limits of $20,000, $25,000, those three numbers yet. But that will call out a lot. This organization probably want to do $1.5 million. I'm saying, well, we can't apply for it. So under those circumstances, and for all the reasons that we discussed, this was just an initial informational thing. For those that want to apply and fill out a complete application, I'm prepared to support a motion that would allow potentially 280 projects to 280 projects to apply. all the categories except the one we just wanted. Somewhat reliable. I think it's big enough. They draw lines in that next category. It's highly connected.
Here's my strange question. Anyone in this last category, 10 to 13, were any of those not eligible?
There's ones where people put non-eligible, but I don't think there's any where all 3 reviewers put not eligible.
There was one application that 2 reviewers put not eligible.
Did we review that one?
We can? One moment.
Isn't that the most solid one to pick out?
I think that's why we're reviewing it,
Yeah.
potentially.
So if it's not eligible, if we're saying it's not eligible, but it actually scored above a 10, why are we even looking at it? We probably should eliminate that one. Just one application, I don't know why it matters, but.
But as I understand, we're gonna look at it, to see whether the determination of ineligibility was in fact consistent with our prior decision.
Mhm.
That's right.
Who has the culprit this time? Waiting for me.
You are.
I had some pretty low scores.
You are. Top bracket is one of them. We can't speak to it.
And who else? Me?
Wait. Yeah, I need that.
I was pretty brutal on a couple.
Don't be honest. Want me to pull up their application?
Yeah, pull up the application.
Just be careful, the owl's really good at picking up even whispers. The owl can pick up your whispers. Be careful with the project name. Does anyone want to know where they were on this?
Yes.
Yeah.
I can come by and circle your number on your sheet if you have it. Yes.
I don't want money.
Ignorance is bliss.
I think Gordon's the highest, and I wanted him as my law school professor when he retired.
I also thought Gordon would be the highest. He's not.
Really? Really?
So.
He was going to be my college professor.
I hope that's okay to say. You are tied though with someone else.
Oh, it's not ranked at all.
Yeah. I appreciate that whoever just became the hardest scorer, I appreciate you. I think set a valid role for the rest of those. You guys both thought you were gonna be 13.
Yeah, okay, so the reason I said it, and I can add it if you want to, but the reason I scored this one was I thought it was prevention, not in the category they thought. So it technically eligible, but I thought it belonged in prevention. And who else scored it? And did he say the same thing? So it's eligible under the MOU, it's eligible there, but when I looked at it, I thought it fit in the category of prevention, not this line.
Haley, that's because I had the most.
Yeah. Chad didn't say anything.
I must have been in the same room watching it.
Yeah.
Excuse me, can I?
What was that?
Not the specific project, but this is a project that scored greater than 10, but had 2 ineligible scores.
Because the 2 reviewers, me being one of them, thought the project belonged in prevention versus treatment.
This is B8 on this list up here.
Yeah. So if you want to ask them to apply, you can, or if the other reviewer and I both said that it belonged in prevention, ask them to apply in prevention when the prevention grant comes up. Courtney? I didn't see anything wrong with the project other than, I think, where was it, B?
I feel comfortable reaching out to them and saying we encourage you to resubmit and release the prevention one.
I would agree with that.
And B23 is the same. I know it's the South Hampton.
Mine too?
No, it's actually Liz's.
Okay, good.
B23 is the same.
It's Liz's?
Definitely.
Then, yeah.
So if those two, it was indicated that prevention, they should apply to prevention. We just politely say to them, thank you for applying. We don't believe it belongs under this pillar. Please look out for the prevention and apply then. That makes sense?
Yes.
So I still
Courtney?
think that we should exclude anyone under 13 points from this round of applications. That's, I believe, it's even Mary's recommendation on here. I think we should go further than that, but I think we should at least do it in the middle. Below 13 should not be invited to apply.
I mean, I'm inclined to say anything under 14.
But that eliminates 45, and she's saying out of that 45, Mary would have recommended 20 to move forward.
She would recommend 25.
Yeah, 20 to take out, excuse me.
Right,
Mm-hmm.
So 25 would move forward.
Well, my recommendation is to not.
I know, but I'm just trying to ascertain what.
Yeah.
What the recommendation.
My recommendation is strongest with under 10. In all honesty, I think our letter of intent, based on the evaluation questions and the comments you all had, I think these scores could, as we were talking about, as Lydia mentioned, with one that just didn't seem to apply under that right pillar, we can't tell them which pillar to apply under. I also had a hard time reading all these and knowing they're not going to be invited, so I'm not a great person. I can't answer that without putting a motion first and logic second. I think there is a process. We could eliminate these based on these factors up on the screen. And you could all eliminate based on the average evaluation score as well.
I tend to be aligned with Courtney and just, I feel you, but I think like digging into one at a time seems tough. And just taking it, we've eliminated the lowest, let's move up and then something might be the best.
And I would add that it's not the end of our funding.
Correct.
So we're not saying you're not welcome to ever apply.
It's just this round.
It's just this round. Bruce. Where's your hand up?
I just want to reiterate that we didn't score better than 13. So I'd like to make a motion.
There we go. Go for it, Bruce.
So I'd like to make a motion that we eliminate the scores below 13.
So you're including 13. And do I hear a second for that?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Further discussion?
Can someone repeat the motion?
In 1 second, I can. Actually, I need clarification. To not invite LOIs that scored less than 13? Less than 13. Less than 13 to apply.
So 13 or less?
No, less than 13. The way it's set up on it.
Yeah, if you got a 13, you're good. If you have a 12.9, you're gone. Who seconded? I heard it over here.
Courtney seconded it.
All right. Are you
Any
ready?
further discussion?
I think it comes down to, just work. We're way oversubscribed already with or without this group, so I think I won't be supporting the motion because what difference does it make? I think we should give them a shot to apply and propose a full budget, but that is just where my head's at right now.
Thank you. Miles?
How many folks are under that 13? What would that bring us down to?
So we've already eliminated 12 that were under 10. This would eliminate another 45 applications. Or
So-
LOIs, sorry.
We bring us down to 163. Otherwise,
So we were at 208 minus 45 would be,
163, yeah.
got it. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? All right, I'm gonna take a roll. Here we go.
Liz Blackwell Moore, Todd Brackett, Lydia Crass,
Yes.
Joe Everett,
Yes.
Betsy Fitzgerald, Courtney Gary Allen,
Yes.
Pat Kimball,
Yes.
Ben Mann,
No.
Bruce Nodden,
Yes.
Miles Olet,
Yes.
Eric Small,
Yes.
Gordon Smith,
No.
Ina Thackrar,
Yes.
Chastity Toole,
Yes.
Paul Vinsel.
Yes.
That carries with 11.
Motion carries. Thank you all for that hard discussion, and thank you for voting how you believed was in what you needed to do. So thank you for that. Mary, now where?
Now, if we can go back, so now what I need from all of you is we have the slate of submissions that will be invited to move forward. If we could have a motion or at least a discussion on exactly what elements within their score you'd like me to provide them in the grant, that would be helpful, as well as the structure of our grant application. If we want to go with a tiered system, which is what I'm recommending, what the average or what the cap on the funding is for those, and the number of applications we intend to fund, as well as any other considerations for the grant application that you all would like to discuss now, including organizations that you would not like to, that will not be deemed eligible, budget restrictions, what is not, will not be an approved use for this round, anything else like that would be helpful to discuss so that when I work with them over the next month, we can create the grant application based on your recommendations.
Gordon, and then,
So these applications going to be scored by us or external reviewers of both?
My recommendation is to create a committee made up of external reviewers and members of the council who would want to be involved in that process, which will be extensive, given the number of applications we're inviting to apply and having a full grant application that we will be reviewing.
And do you anticipate that the process is something like what we've done for that no fewer than 3 people would score a given application? Or would that yet to be?
That's yet to be determined. I don't have a strong perspective on that right now. I will by September.
Paul?
I think in order to give the applicants useful information, I would like them to see what their average score was compared to the mean or the median, I think the mean of that pillar.
Okay, the entire pillar?
Yeah, the pillar that is, in other words, we should not count in the 45 plus 12, the 57 that we've eliminated. Don't count those scores into mean.
Okay.
Because that would skew them and make them think they have a better chance than they really do.
Yeah.
Paul, I think that what we're doing though is it's kind of a little bit of and those 162 that are going forward now, it's why they got a clean slate. I mean, they put together a little bit of information to get in the door. So I don't know how relevant that their LOI is, because it was an application.
It just might give them information of what they might think their chances are. And like Gordon was saying, some of them may say,
okay,
yes, I'm not going to apply. Yes. But we should stress to them that their score is now 0. Everyone's score is equal.
So would be given each applicant, like Mary's gonna have a workload where it's a different message to each applicant instead of like a blanket, you're invited to apply, here's all the information of how we score.
I was going to recommend 3 emails where you can BCC each one and let them know if they fell in the 13 to 15, 15 to 17, or perfect score range.
Oh.
because then they could come watch this meeting and see where the. You don't want to write those emails?
It's okay. I've done this entire process on an Excel spreadsheet from hand, so I can do that.
There's a thing called Word Mail, and
Oh.
you can use your spreadsheet to speak to your email. Brilliant.
I love the idea of that.
And
Did Sturber
also,
Jake.
this is a public document. People know what pillar
They can find themselves, yeah, if they try. Yeah, for sure.
You had a question?
Just a couple of clarifications on the grant process. So we're inviting them to apply, obviously, for the project that they applied for, so they have to be the same project, and they can't go over the amount that they applied for. But presumably, they could choose the funding for the grant application if they so chose to become more competitive if they wanted. Guessing that would be okay. And if these are I think those are annual thresholds for tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3. And I know that they're just for conversation, but we would exclude certain larger projects if we went with these tiers, right? So have to take that into account.
You're saying in that letter to invite, that we say you're welcome to apply for the dollars that you said, but you cannot go over, but you can go under. Yeah, that makes sense. Oh. Uh-oh. Yes, Brendan. It's a lawyer.
Lawyer wants us.
Brendan?
I'll apologize because I'm having a hard time hearing, which I think is more about the owl than the speakers. But just picking up on what Joe said a minute ago, the phrase, the applicants then, when you move into the application phase, you have a clean slate. And I think Ben just said something related to what I'm asking about. Just to clarify for my own purposes, when the council invites folks who submitted LOIs to then submit an application, the application, will the council be requiring the application to be based on the same proposal as what they submitted in the LOI? Like I'm reflecting on Mary's, tiers slide that she has up and things like that. And so it just wasn't clear to me whether the gatekeeping function of the LOI restricts people to what the kind of project they described in the LOI.
I think it should.
I don't,
Why we
yeah.
had the LOI.
Yeah, I don't, yeah.
That's what Ben said.
My point, Brendan, was more or less that they at most gave us 2 paragraphs. So I think that yes, they have to follow their pillar and follow their priorities, but what the written word could look very different. They wrote 2 paragraphs.
Correct.
So, but they can't say, oh, now I'm great guys, now I'm going to go after recovery support. So I think we have to articulate what their
project has to be.
Yeah.
What their letter of intent was. They can't stay midstream. Oh, I was going to ask you for this, but I've decided I'm going to ask for this instead. They can't. Again, because we really don't know what they were spending their. I mean, we know a little bit of the project. The budget, we had no idea whether it was going to staffing or equipment. We had no idea because we only had the bottom line. But they have to stay within the project they applied for and the pillar.
So as I understand it, it's more of a fleshing out of their proposal rather than like if somebody submits an application that is wholly different in scope and scale from what they submitted in their LOI, that would be a cause for discussion or something like that.
Okay.
For instance, if they put it in for to pave the parking lot, and now they want to buy a hot tub with it.
Yeah.
That's going to be hard to say no to.
Hey,
Are you inviting?
You can get more people to go to rehab.
You know how good a hot tub looks?
Oh, yeah, the women's halfway house is what they'd stay forever. There's a hot tub in that
To
backyard.
clarify, they don't have to request the same funding amount they did in the letter of intent, or they do?
No, they just can't go over. But if they, for some reason, found another bucket of money, there you go.
So Mary, I think though, to your idea around the tiers, they're gonna have to fit into tiers. And I think they're gonna have to self-select that. So like the LOIs that were like wanting 1 million might actually only be able to go into tier 1.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
My thought process with this was that you could change the amount you were requesting for funding up to that amount. Like if you were at 20,000, you could request up to 25 in that small scale project. But if the council, it sounds like the council would like you to stick with what you requested, which makes a lot of sense. Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Unless it's not.
And that's why we're not posting the LOIs right now, so that people can't undercut similar projects that they see, you know, because now they can see all the other projects in there.
And then the tier 3 will see, even though they requested 1 million, the best they're gonna get is 250.
Well, that number has not been decided on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, those numbers,
250 is the number.
those are examples. Those aren't.
People watching already got money.
When we get to that
Yeah.
approximate
You've
number
already
of
know
awards
what's
under
right.
each tier, I don't know how I feel about that. Like where it says each tier approximately however many awards, like maybe when the things come in, we love a lot more of the smaller ones than the bigger ones, so I just don't know how I feel about that, and I can be swayed either way.
So those were originally put there so people would understand and make that determination. But I hear what you're saying. I agree. You don't want, again, until you see what you're looking at, that becomes the hard part.
Can or can't.
Yeah.
Say this, if we create these tiers, are we obligated to stay precisely within what we tell people?
From my perspective, no. But maybe Brendan, I think we can word it in such a way, and Brendan, correct me if I'm wrong.
See, I would
where
think, yeah.
These are recommendations for,
Oh, okay, if you were.
all of this is a recommendation and subject to the discretion of
I think
council.
we easily do this for informational purposes only. This is the approximate distribution of the awards
Yeah.
that we're intending
Yeah.
to provide, but by no means is the council obligated to.
So have we decided the amounts in each?
No, we have not, no.
But that could be the discussion right now, because that
That's
would
what
be
we, if you
incredibly
want to have that
helpful.
discussion now, we can. Bruce and
Right
then
now,
Paul.
what information you're going to give the grantees, the people who are invited to apply for a grant, as far as the scoring and stuff.
Who are invited?
Yes, your first question was, what information on the scoring should I give to the grant applications? Are you comfortable that you have that information?
I am, yes.
Before we move forward? Okay.
Yes.
And I would also like to say that I don't plan to turn around tomorrow and send out a notification to those who will not be moving forward, but that will be, I would like the input of at least the Program and Grants Committee on the language of that before I send it out. And given we won't be finalizing a grant application until at least the next meeting, I don't feel, I may wait until the end of the month to say that, and that feels important.
So remind me, one sec, Courtney, okay, a sec. Remind me the timeline. So the grant, we approved the grant. Your hope is in the September meeting that we approve the grant application.
Yes.
And then the grant will be sent out after that. And then they'll have 2 weeks, 3 weeks.
Oh, I was under the impression it was around 2 months to complete a grant application.
Okay, excellent.
That by
Okay.
November 1st, and we could convene the committee early November to make decisions. We can, I don't have strong opinions right now around the timeline of that.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
But that's the timeline right now, is that you're waiting for the application to be done before you notify people. So that when you notify them that they've been asked to apply, you have the application approved for by the committee, which is in September. Okay, thank you. Courtney.
People know if they've made it in or not. I just spent the last hour advocating for you guys to remove one of my projects because I know how much I paid, how much I applied for, which pillar I applied for, etc. So I can like look and know. And so does everybody else if they even look at the spreadsheet. So I think that they should get, their average amount, because some people are gonna be able to figure that out, and some people aren't, right? Like, people who are quick on their feet and know how to do this work are gonna be able to go to the spreadsheet and say, I got 14. And people that don't have access to that level of like strategy aren't gonna be able to do that, which sets us on different.
Yes, if it was me, I'd know right now if I was on the list or not.
So what are you asking for?
I'm asking for people to get a, email with their score clear.
Right now?
As soon as possible, because anyone that is watching this show right now knows what they're in about.
But I will say, I don't know, because I'm on a bunch of these pages, the numbers, so I'm not sure.
But you can go back to your email and check.
They're just exact numbers that have been used.
Okay, so if I'm understanding what people are saying, they want an email. I'm gonna try to do this simply, maybe even a generic email, I don't know, that said, oh no, you want the score on there. That you send out to 200 people an email that has their score, and that if they've been invited to apply, you're gonna say to them something nicer than, but stay tuned, you'll get more information. Or the people who didn't make it say, we're really sorry that your project didn't make it, but again, for some of those cases, we may say, we know a couple of them were probably prevention versus treatment, and just give them their scores and say, thank you very much. Is that what you're saying?
We can do it even more simple. For this week, we could split them into two. Did you get in? Hello, thank you, just contacting you to let you know that you have been moved on in the application process. We will be in contact as soon as possible, please stay tuned.
Okay.
The other group of people that didn't get invited, so sorry. Unfortunately, we received a lot of applications, something nice. You have not moved forward to the next round. Sorry.
Then the couple prevention ones.
That you may want to reach out to and just say, and you can say that even in a generic letter. Some of you applied, we'll be in touch with you if you're sending a generic letter out. You can say, some of you will be in touch with, you may have applied under the wrong pillar, and then you can email the two that are there that applied under the wrong pillar and encourage them to do that. Is that?
Yep, Mary.
Yeah.
And so you guys are talking about a BCC email.
Yeah.
Like, this is an LOI, not an application.
Correct.
So I think that category should get an email. Is that where we're going? Rather than, hi, Joe, you didn't get in?
Yeah, I don't think we should send individual
Okay,
scores
so
out. It would
just
be
trying to
very time
preserve your
consuming.
sanity, maybe, so,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and that is my question, Mary. Do you have the time to do this? In what time frame can you do it?
I do want to vocalize, I am a little bit concerned about reaching out to people to say they're not moving forward and not talking about the language with that. And we don't have an appeals process. And I have the time to do this outreach. I worry about the time to respond to 45 emails with a reason as to why. Also, to ensure, I mean, we've moved forward in this process and we are at a huge turning point. It feels, I can do this next week, by the end of next week, but I would really like to talk to Brendan and wrap my own head around this.
You'd like some help with the language of the denial.
I think lots of people around this table, sorry, have gotten denial letters.
Okay.
Then they can
Way too many.
forward that language along
Great.
to, so you don't know
Please.
what they did.
Gordon?
Okay.
I think would be much too casual about it. This is the first communication of us to these individuals. This is really what the critical for someone. And that communication needs to be well thought out so that it reduces the number of people that are going to pick up the phone and call Mary and call any of us and complain about it. The grant and programs meeting is on August 27th. That may be a little late, but I would want Mary to have plenty of time to run this communication by Brendan and Joe and Pat at least. We're not going to wait for the grant and programs committee to opening of the Recovery Center saying for a different time, maybe with the meeting. So I just think that this is an adequate discussion about how what these communications are. And if we don't do anything until, well, for a couple of weeks, we ask people who are watching the meeting or really watching these, well, fine, they know what they know. This is not a public process. But other people, I think, can wait until they receive the communication. And that the communication will be very focused. I mean, I'd like to see it, so things like, there were many fine applications, even in the group, well, certainly the group under 30. There were many good projects submitted, unfortunately, way more than we could do. And please realize that there are many potential funding sources in the state for such projects. And like we suggest, the following list, the federal delegation, private philanthropy, the Office of Behavioral Health. I mean, you can go on there. Yeah, 39 subdivisions that have opioid money. So to give them some hope, and to send them in the
Bruce?
No, go ahead.
I will say that I received a very nice letter like that from MEHAF. They had a recent application process, and it was very respectful. And if you add that language of other opportunities, I think it's a wonderful way to go. And I know that you've been saying this all along. You want to make sure this is thoughtful. That's us.
My recommendation at this point, and we can have discussion, is that Mary has really shown us that she has some ability to be kind and tactful, and that I think that we give Mary the time she needs and to think this through and let her set her own deadline, and she can email us all with her deadline as to how she's going to do this. But I think that we need to trust Mary, that she's going to go home, think about this, think about the best way, time-wise and respect-wise, that she can share with people that, they won't be asked to go further, as well as compose a letter to those who will be able to move forward. But unless you have some objections, I have to trust that Mary has that capability to do that, and we have to give her the time to do it. And I think rushing her, and I get that somebody can look at this and understand they get it right away, but there's nothing we can do about that. And if they call Mary, Mary can politely say, well, you'll be receiving a letter shortly and we can discuss it, kind of thing. But I think we need to be respectful of her time and let her set that deadline.
Thank you. And I do think that by the end of next week, can do this. I know right now I'm far too close to it to do that. And I would also like to know if the council wants to consider looking at our LOIs now as almost like a database of information we have and potential partnerships we can facilitate and support, not only with the subdivisions, but with organizations like MEHAF or other nonprofits who are doing this work, and express to these applicants that we, with their consent, will share this information of their funding request and look forward to supporting them in other ways beyond a grant application at this time. And I do think this is a first step for us in facilitating those relationships with individual applicants and also, again, with our municipalities and others who want to do this work. And we now have 220 projects as our starting point that we can do that with. And that feels important for me, and I also believe for this council moving forward, of the precedent we want to set of our relationship in this world and in this ecosystem of how we'll operate.
And if anyone has a short, not complicated list of community foundation grants and stuff that people that are in the category, if you have one, if you could ship that off to Mary, and Mary can keep that, so if people ask her, she's able to say, these are some of the grants that you may be able to apply under. If you have any of that information, please send that on to Mary.
Can I go back to the notifying?
Yes.
So I totally support whatever Mary wants to do, but I'm sort of stuck on logistics. So Gordon, your remarks or your thoughts around kind of it's important to notify, are you saying that we should every 200 people should get their own email, rather than the categorical email that we talked about. I'm just nitpicking because I think it matters, so.
No, I don't feel I'm trying to look at that issue, just recognizing that logistically it's really difficult to get 20 separate emails. So I think by category is okay, it's more on the appropriateness of the language.
Okay, great. And Mary, if you need, I can help with the letter. Chastity's plan.
Yes, that'd be great.
So whatever you
for you
need.
too, if you need to focus on those.
Okay, well, what I could do now or next week is I can send the 57 emails out and then send a BCC email to all the other folks letting them know they will be moving on to the next round. And I can send them their average LOIs with the grant application at that point.
I could make you a merge mail too from there. If you've got their emails and their average.
It's gonna merge mail. All right. So we're gonna move from that and go to here.
Great, fantastic.
Let's talk a little bit about this tiered system. Do we want this to be part of our process? Do we don't want it? If we want it, what are your thoughts and what does it look like? Yep, Bruce.
Ben had said, thought that these were annual numbers, is that what you said?
I assume
You were assuming that.
Well, and that's part of it as well. We can do 1 year, 2 years across the board. I think that's up to the council to determine.
It would be difficult because some requested very little in year one and a lot in year two, or the opposite. It might be better to do it total.
Do one of you have a spreadsheet that you don't need to put on this screen, but can you tell me the top amount of money in LOI that we just accepted?
Yes, I can.
And the lowest.
1.5 million. How much? Is it 2 million?
You can sort them by amount.
Yeah, but they're not all the same spreadsheet.
I didn't know anything. Wasn't a lot of money. I don't know.
Well, I know a couple of mine actually said 10.
What was it? I think 2 million looks like your biggest request.
I've got a 1.3.
Yeah, $1 million each year under treatment.
Okay.
I think that looks like the largest. Smallest, this.
That's the sum formula. That's just gonna add them up. They want to know which individual one.
I'm so done with so.
More than one application.
No, click E.
I don't know if they're gonna like.
Click your sort, smallest to largest, or largest to smallest. And then you can just go to the top and the bottom.
Okay, the smallest is 10,000. The largest is 3 million.
Oh, I missed the 3.
There's the 2.5 too.
So that must be what I saw was $5,000 a year.
Oh wait, go make sure the 10,000 we actually accepted. Oh, those are only higher than 13. Got it.
And
Never mind.
Mary, those are total funding requests.
We have 15 that are over $1 million. $1 million or over.
Hold on 1 second.
I guess, are there numbers you'd like
Yeah. Like
the metrics on?
for me, like, are there natural groups in your spreadsheet, like above $1 million, you just said there's 15? Is there a natural grouping of 999, 500?
I would say there's a natural, we have 30, 100,000 or below. We have 28, 200,000 or below. And then we have 90. Oh, wow. Okay.
They're naturally grouped, but not evenly.
No, I don't
Yeah.
expect them to be grouped evenly, but are there natural groups?
I mean, we can make them like just by putting like round and back. Yeah.
well, we have 30, so there's 30 submissions that are 300,000, over 300,000, but under 500,000.
300 to 500.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then 500 to a million is 40.
And then
That is annual.
Not all of them. Oh, yes, it's the total. But not all of them are 2-year funding requests.
and then there's 15 above a million.
So it looks like there's a 58 to the 200,000, below 200,000.
Yeah, 200,000 and
So
both.
that might be a natural
No, there's,
small scale project.
yeah, there's 49 that are, oops, under 200,000. There is a break with 200,000. We have no request for 190. There's 182,000 and then 200,000. So that does feel like a natural gap or break.
Under 200,000.
Under 200,000.
And then above
Or small scale projects under 200,000.
Our spreadsheet guru over here is making a spreadsheet, so could you please say those things again? Those two things that you just said.
Mm-hmm.
Math guy.
So $10,000 to $182,000. We have 49 submissions.
10,000 to 182,000.
And those are all the ones under 200.
And how many?
I'm just saying those are all the ones that we have that are under $200,000. Oh, sorry, how many was that?
49.
49.
The average for that is 91,000. Excel just told me that.
Yes, it did.
And then what's the next year?
Well, if we do, if we do 200,000 to under 500,000, those applications go from 200,000 exactly to 499,976. And then 500,000.
There's 58 of those.
Thank you.
2 to 5 is 58?
Yep.
Okay.
And then 500,000 to 860,578. There's 40. Yep.
Oh, look at those perfectly grouped categories.
We have 162 that we're inviting to apply.
Wait, I can just do this. This is the most I've ever spent, Excel.
Why are we missing
69
one?
million.
Why are we missing one? It says 162. We should have 163. Unless you're just missing the bottom one at the very end. Could be, oh, you are perfect. Love when the solutions.
What do we got?
No, no.
Do you have a recommendation, Ben?
No, this was more the recommendation.
Yeah, take in all that info and not give us a recommendation?
I mean, so this gets just, I mean, yeah, I mean, it matters where you have to decide how many of these are. Well, those maybe we can come up with the tiers and then we're not gonna be able to decide the number of awards we're gonna want in each of those tiers right now, I don't think, because we're gonna need that to align.
There's
to the 12 million.
Yeah.
No, that wasn't
We
right,
want
so you didn't have.
approximately equal distributions across below 200,000, 200 to 500, 500 to a million, over a million.
Wait, but
That's 4. No, it's 4 tiers. You have the
That's,
bottom.
those are the tiers that they broke down.
Okay, I'm just trying to keep up.
So there's 3, so,
I think I would, I mean, merging 500,000 and above seems fine to me. I don't think we need to keep it a million and above its own tier, but just totally off the cuff.
With that. I think 3 tiers is better than 4.
Bruce, you had a question?
I'm just wondering, can we even ask the question of whether this council should be funding a $1 million plus project?
Well, we
Yes.
have. We have.
I was gonna say, we're giving 1.1 million to Tessa's house.
Never mind, oh well.
We already have.
But we can start again, like, we're not
Yeah.
always bound to this.
Right, and we can say this round, we don't want it.
This is a new round. I mean,
Correct.
we didn't know what we were gonna get.
But what my fear is, does that eliminate one category? Almost. Are the large amounts, like, I don't know,
I think it tells them that.
are the large amounts treatment? Or the large amounts on reduction? I mean, you're eliminating.
What was the other one?
I think Courtney's right, though. If we say that we're not gonna fund more than $1 million, that doesn't mean they can't apply for up to $1 million and then find another source for the rest of their money.
I think it's pretty dangerous, honestly, because then we're like partially funding really expensive projects that might not get off the ground or get other funding sources.
Because we won't know if they have.
Yeah.
They're gonna take what they get.
You just had them
from
sorted
us.
somewhere.
Because I'm assuming in a budget, you're gonna ask what their revenue sources are, as well as what their expenses are. So if you're saying you're gonna give $1 million to a project that's cost $2 million, I'm not gonna give them $1 million unless I know they have a way to get the other $1 million. If it's a $2 million project, we're only gonna fund $1 million. Where are they getting the other 2? Or you're just gonna, take our money and then, oops, couldn't make it work. Then again, for me, when you look at an entire budget that's submitted to the grant, you have to put up here, these are my current funding sources. The whole project may be $4 million, but I get $1 million from here, $1 million from here, and I'm taking $1 million from you. So you're able to see that.
Is there anyone in the room that runs $1 million+ projects? I'm looking at you, Joe.
Correct. There's more than you think. Wellspring's over $1 million.
Fund $1 million+ projects that I literally don't know.
Well, it depends. A lot are funded, government, state or federal they fund the programs. And the programs, it's sort of graded funding, different funding sources.
Yeah, a lot of the treatment programs are $1 million programs.
Yeah, so I think it's tangential, but in this, to Mary's point about looking at this information we've collected as a database, there's a lot of information. And I think if we could dissect that, even if we talk to Gordon, maybe some of the program grants committee, like looking at that and then this is a good landscape assessment a little bit. So I think we need to look at that and just see sort of what programs, what the unmet needs, what can be filled, can we do a $1 million award? I think we have a lot of information that in the application process will bring even more.
Gordon?
I think we want to be impactful, and so looking at that whole landscape, I wanted to answer Courtney's question. The best example that I can think of is really $1 million for the state money, $1 million for congressionally delegated coming from the federal level, $500,000 from the city, $500,000 from the county, $500,000 in private philanthropy, about $4.5 million. Beautiful thing on all those organizations together. I could see an organization that wanted to do $2 million of treatment, being able to show us that they can borrow $100,000 and they've got a federal grant for $500,000 and we need $500,000. We can't be out there. What we did in December was unique. And we really can't be out there funding $2 million treatment facilities that may continue to need financial support.
So I would propose.
I just want to add that I also want the council to be cognizant of what we have the capability of doing right now. And we don't have the same accountability structures, oversight tools that the state or other organizations do. And my recommendation would be that we do the best we can within the parameters we're working. And we will have additional support, but potentially not to the extent of overseeing $1 million grants, or we will. Just feels important to say.
What do you think we have capability to oversee?
I don't think we have the capability to oversee any ongoing grant applications right now. I think we can oversee, I don't really know. I think with a contractor on and someone who can help with the reporting requirements and the contracts and getting those in place, it's a different story. And that could change next month, 2 months from now.
That's up to us.
Yeah.
That's up to us. And how many contracts can we evaluate, monitor, and what kind of staff do we need, something we need to do. I wanted to talk more about the timing of that. You don't have to do it today, but I'd be interested in how many $10,000 we want to do it. You know, how many $10,000 do we have? I do not think it's reasonable to ask, you know, a nonprofit that's asked for $5,000 a year for 2 years to begin there for 4 months with our pool of other applicants. If I would, for instance, I would like to have us at least think about, take $100,000, put it into a different pool, and have a different, much more simple process, almost another letter, particularly if they rate it high on the letter. Because I just don't think, I looked at those $5,000 and I said, yeah, I wish I could just call them and suggest that they call up the Golden Foundation and ask them for $5,000. I mean, I send them, I mean, it's not fair. They don't have the bandwidth to go through what we're gonna ask them to do. It's gonna cost them more in the application than we'd be giving them 6 months from now. So I'd like to at least have a discussion about these mini grants. And because there are so many grant applications.
What level would you recommend we do that with?
Well, I'd like to know from there, I mean, the ones I looked at, there were a couple that were clearly $5,000 a year.
We only have 8 under 20,000.
Just 8 under 20, that's a good, I would start with those 8. Okay. And I'd invite them to do a different one.
Well, could they do our small scale?
They can do a small.
Well, we're thinking about the small scale being under 200K. So they're talking about an even
Well,
smaller.
we can do 4 tiers.
Oh,
The
yeah.
intention of this is for us to recognize what our parameters are around each different grant application type. And so we're talking about that with a really limited in scope grant application to meet the funding request amount and the project need. We don't need a huge budget from those folks. Yes.
Mary, can you go to your spreadsheet and tell me how many applications are under 50,000?
Yes, I can. 50,000 and under or under 50,000?
50,000 under. 50,000 and under.
29.
So to your point, I love the idea of mini grants and what you mentioned enjoyment. You know, they have like once a year, like they pretty much open it up, and I think we can each get maybe 20 grand. And it's pretty open. And like we make hay when we get that 20 grand, and it's not the, sorry, Nicole, it's not the burden that you have in other grants. So I think they have criteria, so I don't think we have to reinvent the wheel. We have the notion in our head, like let's make it happen. Let's create the framework and get money out. And I think it just such a game changer. Even like we're a larger organization, but that flexibility is a game changer. So I'm totally supportive. I think even outside of this board chat and Tuesday's meeting, like this is, you know, like let's create that mechanism.
We could definitely have an agenda item maybe for our meeting on the 27th, the questions out of it. Because I could see us, for one thing, you know, sending some to private land. I could also see us not only having a simple application, but also a different timeline.
Yep.
They need $5,000. I don't want them to wait know, to get a check in December when it's a good solid little proposal. So they just should be considered a way, I think, timeline, application wise, and even suggesting to them that, gee, while we're looking at this, why don't you call us? Because we think that might be helpful.
They will all still need contracts though. So if you want to put out like 10 mini grants, that's 10 contracts that will have to be written in. Yeah, no, for sure.
I mean, you know, the King Foundation does similar. The King Foundation is under 50,000. You can apply every 2 years. And it's a pretty open-ended, it's an easy application. Courtney?
I have a proposal, I'm not pledged to, but I think this is what I hear people saying. I think that a motion should be, to have 4 tiers. Tier 1 is mini grants, up to $50,000. Tier 2 is $51,000 to $200,000. Tier 3 is $201,000 to $500,000.
Wait, sorry, can you go back to just after mini grants? What's the next one after that?
51,000.
Shouldn't it be, what about people who are requesting like $50,500? Shouldn't it be just over? Because then we do under 50K for the last one.
I guess so.
So over 50K and over?
50,01.
50K and over.
001.
And less than 200, you said?
Yes.
No, you said, wait.
Okay, I'm gonna start over. Tier 1 is up to and including
Up to and including.
50K. Tier 2 is 50K and 1 penny.
Is more than 50K
Yep, to 200.
to less than 200. Not including 200?
Including 200.
Including 200.
Tier 3 is $201
Greater than 200.
to 500K, including 500K. And the final tier, tier 4, is 500K and $1 to 1 million. And this is where I think I might not have the consensus yet, is I think that there should be a max award from this council in this funding round of no more than 1 million. If someone needs more than 1 million, they can do what the fancy thing that people do to make $1 million projects happen. Grade it, there we go. And come to us with a good proposal with grading funded.
These are totals, so these are 2-year totals, or is this a 1-year total?
This is total.
Total, so this is total.
Those were the numbers we gave them earlier, totals.
Beautiful.
Yeah, I think.
It's right, but are your numbers to the total?
Yes, it's totals. We gave her totals to work off of,
These are
so she's doing
totals.
totals, yeah.
Okay.
I have a question because of something Ben said earlier. I tend to think that we should invite the notion that they could apply for more, that these are our recommended guidelines. I think we should, at least for this, we can all change it down the road, but I think for now, that seems really inequitable. That then somebody throws in, you know, $2 million, we end up funding it, another group that tries to come in under $1 million. You know, I just think we should be, this is all we're gonna do.
That was my
Your
proposal.
application that I come in amongst.
Yeah, that's right, I think that's
Oh,
really.
that's my proposal.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
actually quite mean when it comes to these things, very strict.
Courtney, is that a motion?
I hope so. I put it on the magic paper.
I will second that motion.
Okay, there is a,
No, you have a motion and a second and then the discussion.
okay, so there's a motion and Paul seconded the motion. Okay, discussion. My discussion is, I am assuming your thing is that this is the recommended. So again, if someone chose to submit one for more, they could. We probably, okay, so you're not saying this is a recommendation, you're saying this is it. Okay,
But we're saying to 15 people that just went through the LY process that they have to
They don't have to change
They
it.
have to change their request.
They have to change the request. And again, if they look at it and they say, I can't do it under the million, then they don't apply for the grant.
And we did tell people who asked, is my project too expensive? We can't tell you right now, but the council may decide that you are just ineligible based on it being too expensive.
So right now, if you submitted 200, you either have to, in your budget, and it would be a question I would have. I mean, I'm hoping they would answer. If I submitted 2 million and now I'm going to submit it $1 million, I hope somewhere in this grant application, you've explained how you've changed a $2 million project into $1 million project.
Yeah, it could be collaboration, yeah.
Right. I would assume that would be a question I would have if you submitted an LOI that said 2 million. Tina?
Would this be the same for each pillar? Are there disparities between like recovery, LOIs, and treatment? I mean,
Treatment has higher.
Treatment is very expensive, right? So
This is for all the pillars that were in this LOI. I'm not at this point including prevention in it. We haven't seen prevention. So I'm assuming that this means for the pillars that were included in this letter of intent.
You think she means
The
these
average
tiers?
project in treatment was above the maximum that we just proposed.
Was
Yes.
within this.
One,
The
two,
treatment
three.
was within this.
The average treatment was 534,000. That would not be the average.
Total.
Huh?
Total,
Was
so,
that a total?
yeah, it's not by year,
I'm
so,
sorry.
yeah, no, you're good.
I can say that the ones that are above $1 million in the request, there are a total of, how did I do that? There are a total of 15, and 3 of those are, one of those is recovery support, 3 of those is harm reduction, all the rest are treatment.
yeah,
So-
I guess I'm just nervous about minimizing the amount of funding going to treatment.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't have an easy answer, but I wonder if this applies equally to all pillars. I'm just raising that question.
I understand that, Kena, but I also understand the limitations we have with the amount of money we can give out. And I really do feel that if someone has a $2 million project, they're just gonna have to find other sources of funding, and we can maybe help with them and rate it in, but they can't rely on the Recovery Council for the whole 2 million.
I think people who are putting that type of a bid for us, a proposal, have a lot of irons in the fire. I mean, your work, if that was TOA, we'd be looking 16 years on it to get something over. That milestone hit. So I think, and I think some of the proposals in the treatment that I reviewed were like really amazing enhancements to like existing, and I think that's what I'd love to see more of that, because I think there's so many gaps. But can I ask Courtney, is this for this round of money only, or are you proposing this be our framework?
Oh, I won't be here next time,
No.
you can do whatever you want.
But so we're just looking at the
Yeah.
November, okay.
Okay, for the sake of time, I am going to ask and call for a vote, because Mary has some stuff that we want to move forward. So I am going to ask if we can call a vote at this point and see where we are. Does anybody need the motion repeated? If not, will you call a roll? Haley, please.
Yep, Liz Blackwell-Moore, Todd Brackett, Lydia Crafts, Joe Everett,
Yes.
Betsy Fitzgerald, Courtney Gary Allen, Pat Kimball,
Yes.
Ben Mann,
Yes.
Bruce Nodden,
Yes.
Miles Olet,
Yes.
Eric Small,
Yes.
Gordon Smith,
Yes.
Hina Thakrar,
Yes.
Chastity Toole,
Yes.
Paul Vinsel. Carries with 13.
Motion carries. Thank you very much for your patience. Mary, go for it.
Next question is, are we gonna set, like target numbers for how many applications we're gonna fund within each of those 4 tiers? Did we say no? Sorry.
Oh,
Did I miss that?
I remember someone says that they don't want to do it.
About the applications that fall within those categories. Because it depends on, it's gonna be an estimate.
Yeah.
Can't know exactly.
Yeah, it'll be recommended.
Well, and we don't.
We don't even have to do it right now. She just needs to know what she needs to put in the application. And one of the thought was that we were gonna put in the application that you need to know, this is how much money we have. These are the tiers in which they're, and we were hoping if they thought we would know we were gonna support one under $1 million, but they were estimates. Is that what you're asking, Mary?
I don't know. Sorry. If we have a target number of applications per
Yes.
tier, yes, that is what I'm asking.
But it
Sorry.
can't be an exact number.
No, but what I can do is go give this spreadsheet to Ben because this is the only thing he can see. And maybe he can give us a number of, based on how much money we actually have versus how much was requested.
You give Ben all the fun now. Or we pick a number.
25 per candidate.
Oh, you want to get 25 between 500K and $1 million?
No.
I'm just throwing something out.
Oh,
there.
I would think there's more at the bottom than at the top.
Ben, share your wisdom.
I'm gonna just, it might be interesting to say we have 12 million, let's have 3 million in the under 50K group.
Oh.
3 million in the 50 to 200, 3 million in the 20, in the 200 to 500, and 3 million in the 500 to 100.
Basically what I said too.
I'm just gonna give Ben my.
Well, we could, that,
So $1 million per pillar per.
I feel like
year?
consensus is the best way to go into it. I wouldn't make a motion on this. It's scary.
if all the harm reductions are under K, then,
Yeah.
yeah, we wouldn't.
I'm just worried putting a number period of what we're gonna do
Yeah.
here until we get things in.
We already know what the projects are.
And we already know how much money
We know how much they have.
But we don't know the project.
Yeah.
Say what?
And you don't what if you see the project, you're spending way more in one pillar but they're all if you start putting numbers on how much you want to spend in a pillar, then how much you want to spend on the tiers, you're just going to tie yourself even more by giving yourself all those constraints.
So,
I was just gonna say, we're approving 163 to apply, we'd be predicting the future to know if we expect a 25% reduction in those. We couldn't, I mean, they could be all the $1 million projects.
Yeah.
It just feels like a concept that we don't have enough information.
If council doesn't want to put those target numbers, we don't have to. Just something that I would leave out, and also the link to funding, if it's 2 years for all 4 years. I assume it is, that we're doing after 2 years.
Yeah.
I think we're doing it by total, so total project.
Are there any constraints on eligibility? Liz sent me a note about for-profits that I said I would read out loud. If anyone else has anything.
Oh, I have 2 things.
Go ahead.
I think this is a grant question, but I would like to see board of directors list and board of directors bios and staff bios that are on the project. I've had to put that on many occasions for a grant. And then budget.
I don't agree with that.
Would you like?
Just on the bio. What is that suggest?
Google the name.
Putting them, asking them to collect all the bios, all the board members,
Do it on multiple.
Yeah, I think, board of directors' names and at maybe the end of their term, so if they're, or something, but it's asking for them, particularly if I'm looking at some of those small organizations, asking them to get a bio. And I'll tell you, board members can be funny. They may say, I don't want to do that. So I'm not that. The budget piece, I'm all in favor of. Yeah.
So I do like the idea of having staff. And I'd ask Ben, the procurement's really streamlined application, your RFP process, not your, but I think the team is important. Who's doing the work, I think it's worth getting some intel on that.
And here's my reason why. I will not talk about who or what or when, but we were very intentional in the way that we built that question around leadership and experience. And some people answered yes, and I know for a So I need some way to be able to assess that within my ability, with the information. I'm only allowed to assess things that are in front of me.
And I would want to assess, I guess, the team doing the work. I agree, the board can be very tricky around what they want. So I think a board list, and then asking, and as a question, information about the team, and we have those all. Like, that's.
Not bios, no.
Yeah, key
We
staff.
don't care about all of that.
Yeah.
Key staff.
Special project, key staff.
Who will be the lead in the project?
So are you saying key staff resumes?
Well, I don't, we've had to send resumes to Courtney's point. I don't have a dog in the fight. I think in their application, if they write a sentence or two about the key staff, that would be helpful.
Do you want the staffing question the same across all 4 tiers?
I would say keep it as consistent.
Gordon?
I think many people. Like Courtney, the application is a small state, I need more than. I know we have all kinds of questions like these, but I'm not gonna subject 160 applications. One single edition. We'll have a chance to read it. And we're not the state, I don't want to look like the state's RFP. We need to take forward and say, oh, it's what money is it? And, very delicate balance. I don't want one thing that's more than is really.
I think the team, the key staff is very relevant. Like, I think the people that are doing the work, and it doesn't, people can structure it. I agree with you, it shouldn't be the state's application. I think there are just some things that are very relevant to the project. So that's.
You can ask for additional information. Can I ask the question of people who are in knowledge? Besides a more detailed budget, and for me, needs to include revenue plus expenses. Do you want any other information from them? Do you want any tax filing? Do you want any of that? Yep. Mm-hmm.
Maybe add how much they plan to use for admin and indirect.
So
Yeah.
it's getting before 25. So I just want to make sure, Mary.
Yes, I told Liz that I would share what she sent to me. She has a note about for-profits. She says, I do not think the council should be awarding any funding to for-profit organizations. And while I understand that many for-profit organizations provide quality ethical SUD services, I do not think the council currently has the accountability and oversight tools and knowledge, like the state does or other funding organizations, to ensure that for-profits are using the funds properly and ethically. I believe there were enough LOIs to show that there are plenty of not-for-profit and government organizations with internal accountability processes like a board and or commissioners, counselors, to do important harm reduction treatment and recovery work across the state. While we are creating the council process, contracts, evaluations, etc., adding in accountability measures for funding to for-profits is something I don't think we're ready for, and I think we should decide not to fund for-profits at this time.
So from Liz. So Yeah, and I will add my thought to that, and I believe most MAT programs in the state of Maine are for-profit organizations. I think all but one are, correct, yeah. Huh? Gordon?
I really respect this opinion, but this decision was made. We
Mhm.
made this decision that these organizations are eligible for many of the reasons that I just mentioned. One of them. I think all the treatment centers are for profit. Individual, so, I-
Because we said it was open.
I agree 100 and wholeheartedly with Liz. That's it.
And I feel like, I believe we made the decision too, Gordon, and I think if we want to change her in the next council, I think that.
Who's up?
Miles' hand is up.
I think to get us to this finish line, I think the decision been made.
Yep.
And the council can.
We asked them to apply and they applied and then we changed the rules. I don't think that's right. Miles, you had your hand up.
Hi, sorry, it's definitely hard to hear today what's going on. But so I guess the way I look at it with the for-profits and the non-profits, like folks were just saying, we allowed them to apply in the LOI. We can't change that. I guess my thing with the for-profits is if folks are making $10 to $20 million a year, that's their profit. I don't think they need the money, so I would like to know that budget. I'd like to be able to see that. But there are some for-profits that are not making that kind of money. I don't know. I just would like to see that. That's all. Do people need the money or not? If someone's making that kind of money, they don't need this grant money. There's only so much available.
And up until about
That's
2 years ago, Fresh Start was for profit. They just got their nonprofit status about 2 years ago.
Well, I think, Miles, I respect the opinion greatly for him. Going down. For instance, would we be concerned that Maine Health, a nonprofit organization, has X billions of dollars of revenue and a net margin of tens of millions of dollars? I've worked in this nonprofit sector for 45 years, and I can tell you my conclusion is really that the nonprofits don't operate like this. As the for-profits, at the end of the day, you have to have enough revenue to continue operation. So I respect everybody's opinion, but if you really did this today, for instance, and you reverse course and said, okay, no nonprofit, we'd have to, number one, say, well, how do we deal with this old proprietor that's got a treatment center, for instance? Is that for-profit? Is that nonprofit? But out of those 163 applications, I would guess you'd lose a third of them. And some of those applications are very, very good. And I don't think we'd have to have, really entertain the discussion the next time we go out with a grant. But this was settled, and I think it'd be a horrible decision to go back and change it.
Yeah, I don't think, Gordon, I don't think that we should not allow them to apply. That's what I said at the beginning of my statement. I mean, they should be able to apply just like the rest, just like everyone else. I guess.
Miles, look right at the camera. We can't hear
Should or
you.
should not let them apply? Now I don't know what he said.
I'm looking into extenders to the microphone. Hopefully I'll leave you guys that parting.
Oh, okay.
He wants to let them apply, but I think he wants some kind of question around how much they're profit margin is.
That's what I thought. And then I thought he said not apply.
Well, I would just caution everybody as we wind up this meeting that, to categorize people in one little peg, because not all for-profit organizations are out in bad. There are many of them that are. There are many of them that aren't so good, and they make lots of money. So be careful what we say about in grouping everybody into one group. Brendan, I'm going to let you have the last question before we adjourn. What do you have? Brendan?
Yeah, just a comment that, as you read the approved uses and the point of the recovery fund and the Exhibit E, evidence-based approved uses, the way I read them is the focus is very much on how to best help the people of Maine who are, either dealing with or avoiding, or helping them avoid opioid use disorder. I appreciate the discussion around what kind of provider is providing that help, and I just note that the purpose of the money, the way I read the relevant documents, the focus is on the people that you're trying to help, and it could be that one kind of entity is the better entity for providing the best help that folks in a particular place or category need, or another type of entity is. And I think I would just suggest that the council organize its thinking in this debate on this issue around the people that the council is trying to help.
Thank you for that reminder.
Pat, I got one more thing before you adjourn, but I'll, if there's any other comments, I just want to pause on that.
Okay, pause on that because I have one quick thing. So what I'm hearing from people is that you want budgets, but you want a total agency budget, but you also want a budget that focuses on the project they're applying for. Is that what you're saying? So if you're, okay, then we won't be asking that. Okay.
We could for specific tiers though. If we want to do it for tier 4, 500,000 or above, that's an option. No, never mind. Just want to throw that out there.
Okay, let's not. Okay. Brendan, what's your last question?
Way to try to, yeah.
Just a final thank you to Haley and wish her well on her journey as she goes forward.
Oh, I'm super allergic to flowers, so like all of them. If it grows from the ground, it makes me sneeze.
Everyone, don't leave. I need one more vote. But you're going to be so missed. That's all I have to say.
Oh, thank you.
Your last minute detail, and it's so detailed. I get these little questions all the time with Mom. Mary has a request to attend the NASPE conference.
Is it something? Is it more than what you guys can allocate?
Yeah, $750 for the fee.
Oh, but you guys can approve $1,000 charges without permission. We voted on that.
And then we can do the hotels and stuff.
Yeah.
Never mind. Never mind. We don't need to vote.
Yeah.
Do you need transfer vote?
If each thing is under 1,000, we're fine.
I think so because we can approve up to $10,000 charges.
Oh, great.
Okay, then we don't. If there's no other business
I won't
to
spend a
come
lot of
before
money,
the
I promise.
council, there's no other business to come before the council. I thank you very much for your thoughtfulness. I thank you for attending, whether that is Zoom or whether in person, and enjoy what looks like a rainy weekend, but enjoy it anyways.
This was a great meeting.
It's a good meeting.
Yeah. Great. Thank you all.
We did. We stayed on task.